Hello, everyone. It is Friday, the 17th of January, 2025. So you've got the 0117. So you've got the 7-Eleven in there. So let's see if there's any chicanerie aujourd'hui, today. It'd be interesting because like the world is it's a beautiful world, but it's also a bit of a mess by certain groups and oligarchs writing the scripts. Anyways, I'm going to get into my Instagram stories first before I get into a couple of videos, including one called Government Gangsters. And Cash Patel's in it. Before I get into that, though, because I was talking about this yesterday, actually, and for years, that we need to take a look at foreign student visas and if they're actually attend school, all of this stuff. And this is, again, a money grab for the educational systems. And it is fucking us over because I will also say, and again, this is not to sound racist because for me, it wouldn't matter what race, what skin color, what language, none of that shit. It's people that are coming here and they're exploiting our resources, including crippling our economy by doing this as well. And when they know they're going back because their work visas are over, the temporary visas or their student visas are over, because they have been in Canada for a certain amount of time. There are people that are coming here, they're getting credit cards. And so again, this is me trying to help the credit card companies too, because again, this it impacts Canadians, right? It's happening here. And they're maxing out these credit cards and they're not paying them back because they're just leaving, right? And so there's a lot of different scams too, but more importantly as well, there are people that are terrorists or that are radicalized that are also utilizing these avenues to enter into Canada. And we have much looser immigration laws and policies than even the US, right? And so I even have a friend that works with CBSA, like in the Montreal airport, and she works specifically with this stuff with immigration. And she's very disheartened with the process and what's going on and who we're letting in, knowing it's a fucking scam and they can't do anything about it because they could possibly be sued for allegedly being racist or targeting a certain group when they know that they're lying, right? And when they claim, if they've been here even as on the foreign temporary worker visas or other visas, and they know they're gonna have to leave, they try to do things like get injured. I know this sounds ridiculous, but Google it, or claim refugee status, which is the big one, right? Which makes them legally able to work and again stay. And again, it's being exploited, ladies and gentlemen. And there's people that are radicalized or are criminals or are just shitty human beings that are literally here just to exploit us and take our money. And those are the people that are again not here for the good reasons. Again, my ex, like his father was an immigrant. Well, is an immigrant. He came here when he was 5. He's been working his ass off his entire life, own a restaurant, working like 7 days a week, and has owned the same restaurant for over 42 years now. All right, okay, and the family is amazing, and very hardworking, good people, very community based, good morals, good ethics, good values. So again, bringing in good cultures that's very aligned. And ethics and values and morals that are very much aligned with people in Canada, right? Or should be, right? These are things that should be fostered and instilled in people. So anyway, I'm already on a rant here. So again, I've also talked about how people are trying to say, oh, the economy is doing great. We've got more jobs and stuff like that. Okay, so here, another report. This is from Roman Babar. He's a conservative member. I think he was a member of parliament. I don't know if he still is. But yeah, he was through COVID and stuff like that too. He was speaking out against the mandates and the lockdowns. And because of that, he wasn't able to enter parliament because you couldn't be unvaccinated and enter no matter what, even if you tested negative for a COVID test. Anyway, so read the damn numbers. Almost half of the December jobs are in the public sector, which means government. Again, private sector jobs account for just 27,000 out of the 91,000. Okay, so like 1/3 essentially of jobs that are actually ones that are not funded by taxpayers, right? So if you're creating jobs and it's still taxpayers that are paying those jobs, even when they're bullshit new committees and whatever you want to call it, organizations that are based on climate change or the woke DEI stuff, no one wants that anymore, and it shouldn't be funded anymore, and we shouldn't be hiring more people to be into these jobs. I've talked about underground tunneling systems. I've shared this before. Not this specific video, but others.
To Brazil, Buenos Aires, and then Antarctica, without ever coming up to the surface for air. And you can do it all way more than 1,000 miles an hour on magnetic levitation trains, otherwise called maglev. One thing he told me is he went
Magnetic levitation.
from Virginia to Los Angeles in 45 minutes. Do the math, 3,000 miles an hour. Most people don't even believe that there's a tunnel network. There are hundreds of thousands of miles of tunnel systems. Go from New York.
And in Canada too. There's underground tunneling systems everywhere in the world. Oh, that's my husky playing in the snow yesterday. And that's deer again. They're so cute. Yeah. Okay, so I want to show this post as well because it's important. When world-renowned truther Dr. Peter McCullough says the current strain of bird flu is from gain of function at Athens, Georgia biolab, believe it. So this was very interesting. And so what I did was I'm like, I'm not going to just share this without verifying first. So what did I do? I went in a rabbit hole. USDA Agricultural Research Services, ARS, laboratory in Athens, Georgia, has been involved in research related to avian influenza, including gain of function studies. According to a study by the McCullough Foundation published on December 31st, 2024, there is genetic evidence and historical context suggesting that laboratory activities, including gain of function research, may have contributed to the emergence of the H5N1 clade 2.3.4.4 Bravo strain of bird flu. The McCullough Foundation study indicates the USDA poultry lab in Athens, Georgia, has been linked to the bird flu outbreak. Gain of function research involves modifying pathogens to enhance their transmissibility or virulence, which can be controversial due to the potential risks of accidental release or misuse. Goes on from there. So, yep. It's such
it's
a
a trial drug
crime that people are getting away with this. People that are supposed to be doctors and scientists and fucking experts. So this was painful to watch because this is like the conversations I was having with people as well.
It's a trial drug. We are still in clinical trials, Matthew. And
why are you so?
You just have to look at the numbers.
Just in the sense of like the finest minds of science,
The finest minds
in an extraordinarily short amount of time, have come up with this vaccine. It's proven that it's working statistically. Why are you so cynical about it?
We have no long-term data. We have no long-term
But we
data.
don't have a chance to have long-term data because we have this virus.
We do.
Killing people around the whole world.
No.
We don't have that luxury, surely. Why are you so skeptical about the whole thing?
99.8% because of the facts. 99.8% survival rate from COVID-19. The average age of death is 82. This was a virus that was and remains.
Not care about this.
Exactly that.
No.
This is the language.
It's the language. Of course we do. But we should always have looked after those people. We should always have looked after those people.
Why not take all the NHS workers that choose not to be vaccinated? In some health trusts, we're talking 25%, and then take all the people who don't want the vaccine and stick them all in hospitals together.
Why would we do that? Because it doesn't stop you passing it on. If you've had the vaccine, what you call the vaccine, it doesn't stop you transmitting it. So why would you separate those people?
Massively irresponsible.
That is true.
And this is, and I just
to let you know, we're on air till 12:30, so we need to wrap this up. It's been a wonderful bank holiday.
Oh, we can.
we can disagree, but at least we can still be friends.
We can't disagree on the science. It does not stop you contracting or passing on the virus. It does. It's a trial.
Oh my God, this was painful to watch. Okay, so I have to share with you again for the millionth time, and this is stuff that I shared with all levels of government and the experts within Canada and mainstream media outlets and independent journalists and tip lines. You friggin' name it, because it was important. Where is it here? There we go. No, I do not want to do that. Anyway, so this is from February of 2021. Hey, what happened? Doesn't want me to share it. That's very interesting. It just dropped on me. Anyway, I'll get it again. Bear with me. Actually, I'll continue. Jesus, it just will not allow me to open it. Keeps on shutting down. Anyway, I'll fix that. They're getting better. Oh, so freaking annoying. Okay, I'm going to share a video about government corruption. It's only a couple minutes long, but it's important because it's regarding John Radcliffe as well. I believe he's mentioned in here. And this is from 3 years ago.
Now, the Insurrection Act, Lynn, of 1807, this has been used in 1957 in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's been used in 1962 in Mississippi. It was used in 1967 in Detroit. And it was again used in 1992 in Los Angeles. So, I mean, the Insurrection Act being used is not crazy talk. It has been used before, but yet the mainstream media is going to try to make President Trump look like a dictator for trying to protect our country. If we can, I'd like to have your take on this. On September 12th, 2018, President Trump signed the executive order on imposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign interference in a United States election. And that allows the president to seize the assets of any person or organization found to be involved in the unauthorized accessing of the election campaign infrastructure, using covert operations to mislead people. And if I'll put a link to it on today's show notes, so everybody can read this actual executive order called the Executive Order on Imposing Certain Sanctions in the Event of Foreign Interference in the United States Election. Do you feel like, I mean, is now the time we're going to see this? Because I believe the Director of Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, now has 100% irrefutable evidence of election fraud. Do you think now's the time where the president will be utilizing the executive order from 2018?
I think the president will rely on that executive order. And let's talk. I like truth. You know that.
Yes.
We meddle in other countries' elections, and they meddle in ours. I guess we just say that's kind of far off the course. Russia meddled a little bit in our election in 2016, pretty much par for the course. Mm-hmm. So Trump didn't pass that executive order in 2018 because of anything that Russia had done. Most of what you heard about Russia was propaganda. It was a Russian hoax. He was looking ahead because he knew what Clinton did in 2016. In fact, Obama and Biden used the computers to steal the Florida election in 2012. He knew what they did in the mid-year elections in 2018. Trump was ready for them. Trump laid the steam. He let them do it. He let these governors certify these votes for the Electoral College, completing the crime. There's going to be a lot of people going to jail. He'll rely in part on that executive order. He may have to rely in some part on martial law. He may have to rely in some part on the Insurrection Act. But at the end of the day, he's the president of the United States. He has the full authority under his oath of office to make sure that the laws of this country are duly and faithfully executed. The laws in this country were broken in this election. President Trump has the power of the presidency to fix it. He's going to deal with it.
All right, I'm still trying to do to access my Adobe, which I've already paid for. It's really annoying. People really don't want me to share the information that shows that the VAERS for Pfizer alone in February of 2021, people were contracting COVID via inoculation and spreading it, and the same thing for March of 2022. And I was sharing that information, the VAERS directly from Pfizer, and again, only 3 to 5% possibly reported, especially during those times, because of the financial incentive and the propaganda that was being pushed and things like that. And so I've shared that before in previous videos. And so, look, I don't want to just belabor the point. So anyways, I'll get on with government gangsters. I'm watching this with you. I haven't watched this before, but anyways, a hot take.
Bureaucrats who have been installed by what we call the deep state into every agency and department in the United States government.
What do you think of the way that the intelligence community handled the so-called Russia dossier? And overall, how do you think of the way they've handled Donald Trump?
I've lived in this world for 45 years where you get things and people make allegations. That is a garbage document.
Did you find direct evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Putin in Moscow while you were there?
I never was an FBI agent, so I really don't do evidence. I do intelligence.
Do you agree with Mr. Horowitz that the dossier was central and essential to the Carter Page FISA warrant application being approved?
I agree that it was important. I can't tell you whether it was essential, and by that I mean that it wouldn't have been granted without this information.
I can say.
Yo, Cash.
Bannon.
You were just main stage?
I was main stage.
Did you have a suit on, or were you coming in in sweats?
I'm coming in representing Revere Payments now. I gotta, get my stuff out there.
Okay, great. Into the Oval Office. But tell us what's a Revere Payments.
So you know what? We're following in Steve Bannon's footsteps. The conservative ecosystem deserves every type of business that we can get.
Amen.
For conservatives.
Amen.
War Room's leading the industry on that. Now you have Revere Payments, a payment processor for conservatives. Will never cancel you.
You know what
We'll
happens? They cancel. All these companies try to start. When you start your entrepreneurial company, you got to get a payment system, do it online. Immediately when they find out you're MAGA, boom, you get canceled.
I'm going to be the Indian guy that talks to you about tech at the Revere Pen downstairs later.
Hold it. Tell me about, what'd you say on main stage? Tell me about government gangsters.
So Steve had this crazy idea that we could reintroduce conservative film power to the mainstream American bloodstream. And he was kind enough to take the best-selling book, Government Gangsters, and he's making it into a movie. He's making it into a movie.
You know why? Here's what, it's going to get released around, we think, Memorial Day for the summer in the lead up to the campaign. But this is also for Joy Ann Reid and Morning Mika and all you whiners. Hold it. You want to see retribution? Watch Government Gangsters, because that's the top of the list we're going to start with. We're going to start with Garland and Comey and McCabe and all these crooks that have been inside the government, tormenting MAGA, tormenting President Trump, tormenting the American people, and breaking the law. Am I right, sir?
Well, that's the thesis of the whole book, and that's what you just saw, a 60-second clip. This is how fast these guys work. I don't know when you sleep, but between shows, Bannon is busy making the next blockbuster movie to help save the MAGA movement. But we have to, that's what I was talking about on stage, Steve. We have to call out not just the Democrats, but the Republicans that have screwed over America First and MAGA. And we got to put them on a screen for America to see their corruption. It's not just
what have the Republicans done? Just look the other way?
Yeah, we have a House majority in Congress that should be defunding parts of these organizations on a daily basis because they illegally and unlawfully surveil you. Mm-hmm. How can we reward Christopher Wray as director of the FBI with a new government headquarters building when he unlawfully surveilled Americans 274,000 times last year alone using FISA? It has been abused. It has not been fixed. And this Republican leadership needs to do a better job on Capitol Hill protecting our rights.
Hold on, what is that? Belly
That's
full.
Steve Bannon on the left.
Hey, let's make, I love that. Let's make their heads blow up over MSNBC and The Guardian. Do you want retribution?
Justice.
Justice. You want justice? Hey, folks, at MSNBC, that's democracy, okay? And you're going to get it served up hot and hard, okay? Come retribution. Cash, talk to me about your thoughts about the second term, the priorities of President Trump. He's coming under tremendous force now. They're trying to do lawfare. They're trying to divert his attention. The CCP's in back of most of this. They're in bed with these government bureaucrats, administrative state. They're in bed with Wall Street, particularly you're in bed with Silicon Valley.
Yep.
You know all about the national security aspect of this. Tell this audience, what does he have to fight through, and what do you think ought to be a couple of his priorities in the second term?
Well, he started them in the first administration, but was kneecapped by the deep state rogue actors. And that's the one thing we got to get rid of when President Trump returns to Oval Office. Not only do we have to remove them, but we have to replace them with America First warriors. And I saw you had Johnny McAtee up here who's leading the charge on identifying personnel. That's step one. But step two, and this is what I was talking about in there, is we need you guys. Everybody has to man up over the next 250 days. Every single person. It's not just a Donald Trump victory unless we are marching behind him to help him, because he's going to need it. He can take so much heat and arrows and missiles.
But he can't put everything on his shoulders.
But we got to help. And that's the mandate for us. Whatever it is, education, healthcare, taking on CCP.
That's
we
what
got to do.
You guys got to go to Project 2025. You got to download the 9.
See, there's a lot of like CCP rhetoric in here when they're talking about the deep state, but like there's people from within, again, like like Oracle, Pegasus, Palantir, Oz, CIA, FBI, Homeland Security, FEMA, DARPA, HARP. Like there's people from within NASA that are liars intentionally. And this, again, spans generations. And, just look what happened to JFK, the assassination, November 22nd, 1963. And like the events that happened afterwards, and listen to what he was talking about and what he was trying to expose or stop, including talking about deep state actors. And it's a crazy rabbit hole, including people like Lyndon B. Johnson and people like Dulles and Helms and others that were inside. It was an inside job. All right, look at that. And look at 9/11. And then, you'll see where, anyway, I'm going to continue sharing that, but it seems it's very like MAGA focused, like QAnon-ish, a little bit culty. And again, planting the seeds for us to again painting this war against communism again. When again, it's left and right, same bird, and there's radicals and extremists and terrorists on like all friggin' sides. I'm going to continue on with my Instagram stuff.
It's a trial drug.
Oh, that was the last.
We are still in clinical.
Okay, so that's done with. So I did get the Pfizer stuff up. So this is 28 February 2021. Cumulative analysis of post-authorization adverse events reports of Pfizer 073020048. I don't need this up. And again, just doing a search. Obviously, this is going to come up a lot, but coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19. Look at this. Infections and infestations of COVID-19, 1,927. 4.6% of the VAERS reported were people that contracted COVID via inoculation. And this was February of 2021, right? And so people look at the friggin' science. And when this lady that I shared with you that was talking to these guys on the mainstream media, saying that you could still contract COVID via inoculation and you could still spread it and stuff like that, because he was saying like, oh, like we should separate people that have COVID, and who are vaccinated and not vaccinated and all this stuff. It's like, and she's saying like you could contract COVID via inoculation and it doesn't stop you from spreading it or getting it yourself by getting the vaccine either, right? And so even if you get it and you didn't contract COVID via inoculation, you could still get it by other means. And this is the next one. No, wrong one. I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to show you the March ones as well. So report run date was 21 March 2022. The lock date was 16 March 2022. So if I just take a look for COVID. Bear with me. Coronavirus infections, asymptomatic COVID-19 21, COVID-19, so symptomatic, 2,567. And this is just from like UK reports coming out, and 41 died. So this is total, and this is fatal, as you can see here. So not only that, but you keep on scrolling down, you've got COVID-19 pneumonia, total 52, 15 fatal. So they knew that people were dying from the vaccine. Post-acute COVID syndrome, down the list, suspected COVID-19, 88. And so ridiculous that people are not allowing us to share this information, and we keep on getting our accounts deleted or censored or shadow banned when we're trying to help people. And it's because the people that were the one pushing this from the beginning and lying about it blatantly on social media, on the fucking record, again, people that were supposed to know better, like they don't want to be shown that they were wrong, right? So a lot of people are resigning, a lot of people are moving out of the fucking countries and stuff like that, even though there's no threat to them by anyone. Like they're the ones that are the threat. So the irony in that, yeah, people were saying allegedly that the government was recommending that Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau leave the country. People don't like you because of what you guys did to people, but like again, like no one, like we just want you guys to resign and then get investigated and then possibly get jailed. That's literally what people want. The majority of people. And we want there to be a carbon tax election and a vote of non-confidence. And of course, just like Biden with his State of the Union address, I don't even know what the hell he was talking about, but there was so much fear mongering and blame and fuckery going on with that. And like, I don't know like what he was trying to, like, I don't know what his goals were for that speech. But like, I thought it was like a parody at first. I'm like, is this friggin' real life? Like what is this guy saying? This is ridiculous. Anyway. So I'll finish this movie because it's almost over anyway.
900-page document. Start going through it. If you think you're qualified, or if you're interested, or if you have a child or a friend or a neighbor, get them involved in it too. We need at least 3,000. In fact, we need 15,000 to make sure we get the right 3 to start off with. One last thing before Cash bolts. We did a shoot. I think it was 15 hours long. 15 hours long. Cash was up there for 15 hours. And never missed a beat. I mean, it was all first take. That's pretty extraordinary.
Wow. I was channeling my inner bandit. And I guess the Chinese are listening. But listen, you know what's awesome about our movement is that we're bigger than the haters on the left. We're bigger than the haters.
Amen.
In mainstream America. And we're bigger than the swamp. And so when War Room Films, what is it, warroomfilms.com, go pre-order and stuff?
Yeah, pre-order. Or just sign up for information.
You guys asked, literally, the War Room Posse asked for Steve Bannon and company to deliver a message to mainstream MAGA Americans and how to help. And he was like, you got to come in and film for a day. I was like, I'll film for a week. I don't really care.
Okay, so I thought this was a movie. It seems like it's just promoting it. I'll find it at some other point. Because again, unless that's it, which again doesn't really speak about the people from within that are actually part of the fucking problem. So this is Charlemagne, I think. He's talking about recent alien activity catches the attention of Charlemagne the God. Wait till the end. Beginning of 2024, we had portals. No, anyways, I don't believe this shit. But anyway, here's Charlemagne. I don't agree with some of the stuff that he shares or says, but I do agree with a lot of it. And so I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But listen to what he has.
First, I want to connect some dots here because they are connected. Okay, when Donald Trump was on the Joe Rogan podcast, they had a conversation about aliens. Not the ones Trump wants to deport. Okay, the ones from other planets. Let's listen.
There's a lot of interest in it.
One of the things that
there's a lot of interest in the people coming from space,
Yes.
And I know you're interested in that.
Very interested in that. How much did they tell you about that?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
What did they tell you?
Well, it's never been my thing, I have to be honest. I interviewed jet pilots that say they saw something. And they said, we saw things, sir, that were very strange. Like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor. It was something. And it was going 4 times faster than an F-22, which is a very fast plane,
That's dot one. But there's a man named Cliff High. You should Google Cliff High. He is a researcher known for developing a technique called predictive linguistics, which involves analyzing internet data to predict future events. And based off that conversation with President Trump and Joe Rogan, he predicted a future event. Let's listen.
But what we do have some justification for suggesting is that there will be 39 days between the temporal marker of the Trump interview and the appearance of this visible contention. The visible contention, space aliens. Okay, so
what happened?
Sort of very complex kind of Independence Day kind of right? Nobody will know who the hell is doing what with whom. Now, So anyway, now we have a strange thing where there's swarms of 20-foot drones flying around military bases. So unknown. Nobody knows who owns these drones, who's controlling them. At least they're not telling us guys.
Now, my whole life, 1 + 1 has equaled 2. But then I heard Terrence Howard on Joe Rogan, and regardless of what he thinks about math, 1 + 1 still equals 2. Trump and Rogan had this conversation. Cliff High, who previously predicted the 2004 Indonesian tsunami, stated that an alien invasion will be triggered 39 days after Trump's appearance on Joe Rogan. Trump's interview took place on October 25th, 2004, marking the start of the countdown. We first started seeing these SUV-sized drones on December 3rd. Either we are in the midst of one of the greatest social experiments of all time, one of the greatest pranks of all time, or we being invaded by aliens. Okay, according to Cliff High, the alien invasion will involve air battles between UFOs and military forces, with UFOs even engaging in combat among themselves. Listen, I don't know what's happening. I just know that White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby is telling us these SUV-sized drones are manned aircraft. It's not one, it's not two, it's not several, it's a lot of them. One of my peoples in Jersey sent me a video last night of 8 of them over her neighborhood. If this is manned aircraft, then whose mans is this? Okay, who are these men? Are they little and green? And why are we okay with what's happening? Kirby, your statement didn't answer any questions. For me, it raised even more because I'm a common sense purist. This is what happens when they keep us looking down at our phones. We are slaves to the lies that our smartphones tell us, and it causes us to ignore the realities all around us. You can call people like Cliff High crazy. You can call them a conspiracy theorist, but I don't see it being a coincidence that he predicted an alien invasion would happen 39 days after Trump's appearance on Joe Rogan, when they was on there talking about aliens, and then all of a sudden flying SUVs are all over New Jersey. Why are they just flying over our residential areas? What if they crash into our houses? What's the mission? Is this even lawful? Why wasn't the public informed about these operations ahead of time? Look, man, American government, it's okay to be honest with the American people. Just admit either you don't know what's going on up there or you do, and it's not something you want us to know about, because all Black Twitter going to do is make jokes anyway. Okay, the American people are not going to care unless you tell us it's the Kardashians and Taylor Swift up there driving one of those SUV-sized drones. Look, we can avoid reality, but you cannot avoid the consequences of avoiding reality. I don't know what reality currently is, and I don't know what the consequences of avoiding it will be, but I just want us to be aware of what our current reality truly is. Please give White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby the biggest hee-haw. I listen to a lot of things. First, I want to connect some dots here because they are connected. Okay, when Donald Trump was on.
Okay, so my response to that was, this is a contained cosmos, or whatever you want to call it, with the luminaries and 2 great lights within. We will never interact with aliens from another planet because they are cymatics and sonoluminescence designed or created. The aliens will be humans. Genetically modified humans in costume and makeup and holograms. The land, air, and sea crafts, because Donald Trump was talking about just like in space, but land, air, and sea crafts are advanced technologies from companies like Raytheon, General Dynamics, NASA, etc. Lockheed Martin. Like I've said this so many times before, ladies and gentlemen, the orbs are energy devices that utilize more magnetic force and also harness the energy from the elements in the ether. Project Bluebeam. Donald Trump ushered in Space Force, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it was on September 11th of 2019 is at least when he announced it, and I shared that, and then obviously like announced like more stuff after that, but like I thought was the official date. And so I said, if you think he won't allow his elite friends to attack us for our resources and further indoctrination, then we are screwed. We need to look into this stuff, guys. And so a lot of people are really pro-Trump, and I understand. I said that I would have voted for him too, based on the fucking options that were given. But I mean, he is someone that either doesn't know the reality of the earth, which shocks me, or he does, and he's misleading us. Okay, and they're using these advanced surveillance capability, like data mining, biometrics, cyber, AI, technologically advanced companies like Oracle and Pegasus and Palantir and Oz and stuff like that. I can name so much more, and it's not. And these people are going to be more utilized. And again, look at who owns these companies at the top, and look who has shares and stocks in these companies, and then look who's writing policies, and look who's donating to people within government, like the Senate and cabinet. And it's a fucking deep rabbit hole. And so even people within Canada were trying to get people that where there's foreign interference, multiple cabinet members, and they don't want to release the names. Like they'll release names of people that were part of the Freedom Convoy willingly. Like this is like mainstream media, right? Like just like attacking people that were part of the Freedom Convoy or that were talking about mandates and lockdowns and forced inoculations and all that stuff. Completely destroyed people's lives, including even filming the pastor getting arrested, and others that were again trying to help and getting vilified, and names out there for everyone to see, and like even Jeremy McKenzie from Diagolon and stuff like that. He was getting death threats, and even his friggin' bike a couple of years ago as well. Like the brake lines were cut, allegedly. You know what I mean? But like, it's like these are just, it's just ridiculous. And then even Helen Gruce from Ottawa Police Services, like she's been in the media now, not really like promoting it, but like independent journalists, and because from within her own organization, she was again vilified, character assassinated, all of these things, and then like her own charging her. Anyway, she's still in the courts. It's been years. It's just it's so appalling what's happening for people that try to speak out and expose the truth, or whistleblowers. And I did reach out to the Dan Bongino show and the Sean Ryan show again yesterday, and because I would like to talk to these people and just share more, like again that even with people like verifying that like that Matt Bergs like is the one who sent the email. Like I've told you what companies even like Pegasus, like what they're capable of doing, and then even gave examples of even people within my family where they sent themselves an email from their email address, and it was in the trash or yeah, that's what where it was, or in junk. And then I asked her to check her sent messages, and sure enough, she didn't send it to herself from her own email. And it's all confusing stuff, but this is how like that's like, and that's not even a touch of what else can be done with people's computers, with their phones. Like these are much more hackable than people believe, and anyways, I'm going on all these tangents. And then again, people that are not promoting what the government narrative is, or the mainstream media narrative is, these people are absolutely targeted more by people that work within these companies that I'm talking about, the Oracles, the Pegasus, the Palantirs, the Oz, the FBI, CIA, Homeland Security. Anyway, why does this matter though? Because I think that people don't want people knowing this stuff too.
A missing piece of the puzzle. When observing the old world structures today.
So anyways, Donald Trump was talking about the F-22s. So their speed is equivalent to approximately 2,414 kilometers per hour. So it's approximately 10,000 kilometers per hour for these alleged orbs that Donald Trump was talking about. And Charlemagne said that Donald Trump's podcast aired on the 27th of October, 2024. Can somebody confirm that? Because I know that he filmed it on the 25th of October, 2024, but there was a lot going on, and so I don't know when it was actually officially released. But it would be interesting if it was the 27th of October when it was aired, because again, then you have, if you follow the calendar system that people within certain groups follow, where the spring equinox is the start of the new year. Actually, no, not even, sorry. Like October is considered to be the 10th month, and so you got 10, and then you got 27, and so I'm going to back that up wrong when I was first talking about this, because then it would be 827. Anyway, if you're following this like this calendar system where October is the 10th month, even though it has Oct in the name, which is associated with 8, it so anyways 1027. So you've got, just like with September 11th, towers 1, 2, and 7 falling, controlled demolitions also involved, and then called ground zero. These are all numbers that are utilized a lot in order to tell people within certain groups that, you know, look more into this. This might be, you know, a bit of misinformation or propaganda or psyops, and don't believe everything I'm saying type thing, or don't believe everything you're hearing or seeing.
Hey,
I hope that makes sense.
There is a great sense of absence and alteration. Structures have evidently been altered and changed drastically over the last 200 or so years. And when journeying across our realm,
and 201 is used as well sometimes, like not even just the 7, but like so event 201, you know, that was held at the like that tabletop exercise at Johns Hopkins University on the 18th of October of 2019. This is all again like propaganda, and showing us again like what to expect in the relatively short term. And so you got 201, and then even with Netanyahu, like he again became leader somehow of Israel on the 29th of December of 2022. So you've got the 1229, which is the 201st prime number, and so they got the 201 in there. And then you have where it was July 20th of 1969, where we allegedly we landed on the moon for the first time, and so that's the 201st day of the year, depending on if it's a leap year or a non-leap year. This was a non-leap year, so the 201st day of the year. And so again, the 201's used a lot. The 2017 is used a lot, and so anyway, weird shit.
and studying these structures, a tremendous sense of absence persists. Something is missing. The concept of ethereal harvesting through these wondrous antennas is not enough. It is not concrete enough to complete the picture. Something else was once present that made the entire technological grid possible. This, of course, is the key technological component of these structures, the engine, and the central mechanisms that made them function in the first place. The engines were, of course, not tokamaks. A tokamak is a crude and base instrument. It is a design of the new world. It does not belong in the old world. It would have had no place in their structures. Their sophistication and finesse would not have relied on such ugliness, on such primitiveness. What is undeniable, however, are the parallels between the tokamak's fundamental octagonal form and the old world's love for the octagon. It is very likely that the octagonal formation is an essential component when generating a toroidal vortex. We see the octagon everywhere in the old world. Octagonal geometry underpins many of the structure's fundamental formations. And the peculiar octagonal structures everywhere are not by mistake. They are what they seem, empty shells that once housed something else. This sense of emptiness is everywhere and remains unexplained. So many towers and domes rise to smaller, hollow domed cupolas. Why are they hollow? Why would an earlier civilization waste so much time and energy constructing such a seemingly superfluous and useless structure? But they didn't, did they? A lot of these empty areas are always directly below the antennas. And although not all of these crucial empty structures are octagonal, most are, and they are always situated in key areas, like under central antennas, beneath domed resonators, in the center of closed, symmetrical courtyards, or detached and just outside the bigger generators. And when reflecting on such perfectly wrought geometry, the absence is tangible. There used to be some kind of cylinder or apparatus contained within this space. Furthermore, we also find various historical relics that closely resemble the old world structural style. In these relics, we see that empty cylinders or vessels are an integral part of the object. Could these be miniature functional objects that mirror the form of the larger empty spaces we see in the old world structures? Perhaps a kind of micro household object that enabled access to the wider power grid's energy production? Did the larger structures themselves contain similar cylinders within? In many old photographs, the cupolas and octagonal spaces are already emptied. But there do remain a few images and illustrations that can offer a little insight as to what was present before. In some, we see a type of cylinder, and in others we see some kind of orb or container. Due to the lack of images, it is hard to present a consistent finding. And so much has been altered, and in ways that are almost impossible to recognize. For instance, this is an 1880 illustration of the so-called completion of Cologne Cathedral. It focuses on the top of one of these spires. The wooden boards here are scaffolding. As you can see, the tops of these spires open, revealing some kind of cylinder. This is a model of the area of the spire that we see in the illustration. It was put outside of the cathedral to give tourists an idea as to just how large these spires are. An impossibility for citizens of the 19th century. The men in this illustration are not completing the final spire of the cathedral. They are removing whatever existed in the container at its apex. And it begs the question as to how many other aspects and features of these structures open in similar ways. And why do they open? What did they contain? Interestingly, it is the esoteric and occult that provide some clues. Alchemy was an arcane natural philosophy or proto-scientific tradition. Its central focus was chrysopia, or the transmutation of base metals into noble metals. From its inception in ancient Egyptian, Greek, Indian, and Middle Eastern culture, the field of alchemy, we are told, was obsessed with turning base metals into gold, and a maniacal obsession with creating the elixir of life to achieve immortality. We have all heard of the medieval Nicholas Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone. It is a field of inquiry steeped in a rich fabric of occultism, Kabbalah mysticism, and magic. It wasn't until the mid-18th century that alchemy was divorced from its occultism and transformed into the burgeoning field of chemistry. But there was a small occult revival during the 19th century that continued into the 20th century. In 1922, a mysterious text was written by an equally mysterious figure, The Mystery of the Cathedrals by Fulcanelli, a French alchemist, we are told. To this day, the identity of Fulcanelli is still debated. No one knows who he truly was. And like many mysterious figures in the history books, his name appears to be an anagrammatic play on words. Fulcan is a reference to Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, and Eli, a reference to El, the Canaanite word for God. It is evidently a work of one or more Freemasons, but nonetheless, its alchemical reading of the wondrous and magnificent structures we call cathedrals is potently original and offers many insights and half-truths. And it's in Fulcanelli's reading of the statue of Offerus that was taken from Notre Dame Cathedral and destroyed that he begins to offer the reader some truths. As the legend goes, Offerus was a strong giant, but with a dull mind. His intentions were always good. He wanted to serve the most powerful king on earth. He was sent to the court of a mighty king to serve him. One day, the king, hearing a singer say the devil's name, made the sign of the cross with terror. "Why do you make that sign?" Offerus asked. "Because I fear the devil," the king replied. "If you fear him, you are not as powerful as him," Offerus reasoned. "I want to serve the devil." And so he did, and enrolled among Satan's servants. One day, the servants met a cross by the side of the road, and the devil ordered them to turn around. "Why is that?" the curious Offerus asked. "Because I fear the image of Christ," the devil replied. "If you fear him, you are not as powerful as him," Offerus reasoned. "I want to enter the service of Christ," Offerus exclaimed, and passed by the cross and went on his way. On his way, Offerus met a hermit. He asked the hermit where he could find Christ. Everywhere, the hermit replied. The hermit knew the type of dull giant he was dealing with, and he knew he would not take to prayer. So he led Offerus to a violent river and said, "The poor people who have crossed this water have drowned. Stay here and carry them on your strong shoulders. If you do this, Christ will recognize you as his servant." And so he did. Offerus spent his days and nights carrying people across the river. One night, overwhelmed with fatigue, Offerus received a knock on his door. It was a child who wanted to cross. Offerus took him on his shoulders and began crossing the river. But as he reached the middle, the river became a furious torrent. The waves swelled and Offerus began to buckle. In fear of letting the child fall, Offerus uprooted a tree to lean on, but the child was becoming heavier and heavier. Offerus began to fear the child would drown. He lifted his head up and asked, "Child, why do you make yourself so heavy? It seems to me that I carry the world." The child replied, "Not only do you carry the world, you carry the one that made the world. I am Christ. As a reward, I baptize you in the name of the Father, in my own name, and in the name of the Holy Spirit. From now on, you will be called Christopher." Christopher walked the earth for the rest of his days to teach the word of Christ. Christopher, the one who bears Christ for the masses. In his focus on Offerus, however, Falconelli reveals a certain key to unlock another layer of meaning in the legend's symbolic expression. In his enigmatic manner, Falconelli writes, "Christopher stands for Chryso, who carries the gold. From then on, we better understand the great importance of the symbol, so eloquent, of St. Christopher. It is the hieroglyph of solar sulfur, Jesus, or the nascent gold, raised on mercurial waves and then carried by the clean energy of this mercury to the degree of power possessed by the elixir." Cryptic indeed, almost impenetrable prose. But let's look at this passage a little closer. Falconelli is stating that in the symbolic legend, Jesus, or Christ, is the nascent gold. Nascent means coming into being. The word's etymological roots stem from the concept of beginning or birth. Nascent gold here, or the solar sulfur, is not just gold, it is gold growing into its full potential. The final section of the excerpt explains why the gold is growing. Because it is being carried on the mercurial waves. The mercurial waves here refer to the metal mercury. Gold is achieving its potential because of the clean energy of mercury. Falconelli explains that mercury's color is an emblematic gray, and that explains why many of the representations of St. Christopher coat him in that color. We will return to the legend of Offerus soon, but first let's look closer at mercury. Mercury is of the utmost importance when it comes to understanding not only the mechanics behind the old world's technology, but also in understanding our own contemporary time in which we find ourselves traversing the enigmatic landscape of symbols that have shaped our understanding of history and our place in it. The symbol here represents the element hydrogyros. Its literal translation from the Greek means silver water. Hydrogyros has many names. It was also called quicksilver. Today it is referred to as mercury. The alchemical symbol is precisely the same symbol used in classical astrology to represent the so-called planet Mercury. Pure or native mercury is an extremely rare element in the Earth's crust. It's primarily retrieved from cinnabar, a bright scarlet or red pigmented form of mercury sulfide. Cinnabar is the most common source ore for refining mercury. Both Wikipedia and World Atlas tell us that mercury is the 66th most abundant element in Earth's crust. In its pure state, mercury is a silver-like liquid. It is the only metal that is liquid at standard temperature and pressure. It has a freezing point of -38.83 degrees and a boiling point of 356.73 degrees. It is an excellent conductor of electricity. Its uses are primarily electrical based. It has a primary role in fluorescent lighting. Its other uses include thermometers and dental amalgams. Mercury dissolves all metals, including gold and silver, to form amalgams. The only exception is iron. It is also used in vaccines. Governmental, medical, and pharmaceutical industries declared mercury toxic in the early 21st century, gradually phasing out its use in medicine and leading some countries to completely ban the element. In some countries, it is illegal to trade mercury. Before this, mercury was a staple in certain traditional medical treatments, such as the traditional Chinese medicine. And while I do not dispute mercury's potential toxicity when injected into the body, the concerns surrounding its hazardous potential are largely overblown. All metals, especially when injected and taken in excess, are toxic. High iron, copper, zinc, and aluminium levels in the body contribute towards a whole host of disease, arguably more so than mercury. And yet the governments of our world have not banned aluminium foil. They have not stopped fortifying grains with iron oxide, and zinc and copper supplements are available to purchase with ease and without constraint on the value of dosage a person can expose themselves to with such supplements. Could there be other undisclosed reasons for demonizing and restricting mercury? Let's look a little closer at this extraordinary element's electromagnetic potential. Mercury is an electrically conductive liquid, and because of this, it has historically been applied to create light switches, electrodes in some batteries, as a gas to create fluorescent lighting, and, most interestingly, it was used, we are told, in lighthouses. According to the mainstream historical narrative, lighthouse keepers were responsible for keeping the massive lens at the top of the lighthouse spinning all day, every day. A spinning lens turning at a set speed made the light flash. They usually achieve this by setting the lens on wheels or bearings attached to clockworks that the keeper would periodically wind. In the late 19th century, some keepers, sick to death with having to keep winding the clockwork, began floating their lenses in liquid mercury. The lens's metal base spun more easily in the mercury, which helped the light rotate faster with less frequent winding. It is a practice still in use in some lighthouses today. It is evident from its structure that the lighthouse's sole function was not just to light the way for ships. It was either one of its functions among many others, or just an inherited act of repurposement. Many lighthouses are constructed in the familiar octagonal structure. Many have the red and white stripes, indicative of power stations. Many still have their antennas, and they were situated right next to the water. It is obvious that they had a similar role as many of the old world's power stations we find repurposed and rebranded all across our realm. Lindau Lighthouse in Germany is a fascinating example. We see all the familiar dentils and holes, suggestive of vibration and frequency manipulation. We see the octagonal cupola. They have replaced the original antenna with New World junk, and oddly, the structure has a clock. And although those of the old world made the most advanced clocks ever seen, the presence of a clock face here appears superfluous. Perhaps the abundance of clock faces we see on so many of the old world structures and towers are actually repurposed steam gauges that used to be present to measure the pressure of the energetic water. The intricate and complex design of these lighthouses would have been a feat of engineering for those of the 19th century and their predecessors, unless those that came before the 19th century were technologically advanced, which of course they were. Mercury's role in lens rotation is a subtle example of repurposement. It is very likely that the complex apparatus at the top of these lighthouses were modified as illuminated lenses during the Great Reset, and what existed before operated to extract ethereal energy. For most of the 19th century, gas and oil burners were used as sources of light in these structures. And yet look at the size of some of these lenses. Look at the complexity of the designs. All to house light running on gas and oil? I don't think so. The history of the lighthouse is of utmost importance because it, one, provides evidence of mercury being present in some kind of apparatus directly located in a cupola, the very spot we see emptied on so many structures today. And two, because mercury's presence here was to enable the lenses to spin and rotate more easily. And that's very interesting, because look what happens when you apply magnetism and electricity to mercury.
I have not been to Prague. I would love to go. So I'm answering a question from November on Rumble. Sam Bailey getting a $160,000 fine for being part of the government health terror group. I gotta look more into that.
It rotates and creates a vortex, either clockwise or anti-clockwise,
Yeah, they did.
depending on the application of the current.
I've shared up the Prague clock and what it used to look like and stuff like that. And yeah, they did change it.
A vortex, as you know, is an integral expression of a toroidal field. There are three main types of vortexes: electrical, magnetic, and electromagnetic. In addition to Mercury's electromagnetic potential and its susceptibility to form a vortex when under the influence of current, the silver water also has another unrecognized application. Look. No wonder mercury is demonized and illegal. As you can see, mercury is able to provide even a homemade television antenna with the ability to convert radio frequency alternating currents to extract a television signal. Antennas can be designed to transmit and receive electromagnetic waves in all directions equally. And you could hypothesize that the orbs on the old world's antennas contained mercury. But again, it is no secret that mercury amalgamates with gold and other metals. An amalgam is an alloy of mercury and another metal. Mercury strongly amalgamates with gold, copper, silver, and many other metals. The only common exception is iron. The orbs could not have contained mercury because, as you saw, mercury would have scavenged the gold, silver, and copper and amalgamated with the metals. We do not see any evidence of that here. They function strictly as aerial antennas. But if all of these structures contain some type of engine or apparatus, similar to the Fresnel lenses we see in lighthouses, with mercury continually forming a vortex, then we would have a setup that enabled the antennas to extract ethereal energy and transmit strong electromagnetic signals. Just as Falconelli reveals in his reading of St. Christopher, it was the mercury that enabled the gold to achieve its potential. It is highly likely that the absent cylinders vessels, and containers that were removed from these structures, and which were usually present within the octagonal geometric structures, contained mercury. And it raises a question: if some lighthouses are still running their lenses off of mercury today, wouldn't they still extract ethereal energy? No, they would not. And once again, Falconelli tells us why. As Falconelli states elsewhere.
Gonzo, that's so funny. Someone from Rumble shared a link, and that's literally the link to a video that I just was pulling up. I already watched this video like multiple times. I said this was one of the first videos by Erwin on the lost history of flat Earth that got me down the rabbit holes regarding flat Earth and stuff like that. I had already been talking about moon landings and 9/11 and COVID and all that stuff. But anyway, I do want to share a little bit of this because I was looking at some articles and some other things first. Yeah, it is correct that she's facing $160,000.
In 2023, I published a video titled, "Will I Be Struck Off?" In that video,
she's a prominent doctor from Christchurch, New Zealand.
I outlined the desperate and failed attempts of the Medical Council to silence me, starting in 2020, when I started exposing the fraud of COVID-19 in virology. The COVID crackdowns were unexpected, and I was one of the first doctors in the world to be persecuted and fired. In many ways, it was a blessing, and I elected not to renew my license in 2021. The Medical Council have spent years trying to intimidate me, and in August 2023, they held a show trial in my absence. By mid-2024, my name had been taken off the medical register, but no public announcement was made. So, what happened? Well, we have been tipped off with some information concerning their plan to extract one of the biggest fines in history from me. So, I'm about to reveal publicly, for the first time, what these crooks are up to, their plan to extort me, and why their schemes don't work against the Baileys.
We're very concerned at the moment about the New Zealand Medical Council silencing dissenting voices within the medical community. Concerning accounts of the New Zealand Medical Council saying this is what people who practice medicine have to believe, this is the advice that they have to give, there are to be no dissenting voices on this one. And of course, there were situations where people in the medical profession lost their jobs for having a different opinion to the groupthink.
During 2020 to 2023, professional regulatory associations became de facto wardens of the more authoritarian COVID-19 nation states, which included New Zealand. The Medical Council of New Zealand was one such body which, like a duck to water, moved firmly and swiftly to ensure that doctors complied with COVID-19 and vaccine policies, or face disciplinary proceedings.
A consultant sociologist, J.R. Bruning, and by the way, Jacinda Ardern was a literal radical, I don't even know, criminal. Like even talking about like, we will find you, we'll hook, like all of that stuff. And like just completely going after people that were refusing the experimental inoculation that was not a vaccine.
In the mystery of the cathedrals, the dissolution of sulfur, or in other words, its absorption by mercury, provided the pretext for very different emblems. But the resulting body, homogeneous and perfectly prepared, retains the name philosophical mercury. It is the first-class matter or compound, which requires only a gradual cooking process to transform itself first into red sulfur, then into elixir, and then, in the third time, into the universal medicine. As Falconelli makes clear, transforming pure mercury into a red sulfurous state is the first step. And as mentioned previously, cinnabar or mercury sulfide is red. And as we see here on representations of St. Christopher's robes, he wears one half grey to indicate mercury and another half red, which is indicative of the red sulfur. It is the transformed state of mercury, that allows the gold, here represented as Christ, to achieve its full potential, or, to keep it consistent with the legend, to reach the masses. What Falconelli is actually telling us is that in able to distribute this clean electromagnetic energy via golden-orbed finials or antennas, a special kind of mercury had to be present. This is what was contained within the vessels and engines. And it is likely that it was this unique mercury that enabled the extraction of the ethereal energy from above in the first place. Perhaps it is just a coincidence, if you believe in such a thing, but it is interesting that many of the smaller vessel-like relics we see have markings inside the containers that are red, perhaps a homage to the substance they once contained. Now I know what you want to say. Come on, you are turning a molehill into a mountain. You're basing this off a few passages from the ramblings of a Masonic deceiver. How do we really know that those of the old world were the alchemists of old, and that mercury was central to their advanced technology? Bear with me. I will expose this so-called Falconelli for the Masonic deceiver he is further down the line. But, like I said before, there are many half-truths here that we can extract. And you must ask why this cryptic text about the mystery of the cathedrals focuses primarily on explaining the structures and their symbolism in alchemical terms. For you see, St. Christopher is not the only symbolic expression of Mercury and gold's relationship. Like with their adoration of sound and water, the old world expressed this alchemical relationship in many symbols. In fact, the symbols were so prevalent that the enemy had to appropriate them and use them as weapons of control and deceit. Otherwise, the great reset of the 19th century would have failed. The enemy's genius stems from its appropriation, redesignation, and deliberate obscuring of symbols, to the point where tracing the history and true meaning of one symbol in particular becomes a monumental feat. The abundance of lions and eagles we see throughout the old world, primarily in the form of statues, relates to the elements of gold and mercury. As Falconelli states, the lion is the sign of gold. It represents the terrestrial and fixed force, while the eagle represents the airy and volatile force, or the mercury. When the two champions come together, they attack, repel, and tear each other apart with energy, until the antagonists become one body, the animated mercury. The fusion of the fixed gold and the volatile mercury create the griffin, in which the lion, or the gold, represented the fixed, basic part of the compound, which in contact with the adverse volatility loses the best part of itself, the part that is characterized its shape, that is, in hieroglyphic language, the head. And like the lion and eagle, we see the griffin everywhere in the old world. Like St. Christopher, the griffin is symbolic of the alchemical concoction and combination of mercury and gold that powered the old world's technology. The symbolic association of animals and beasts with alchemy has been eradicated from history, primarily due to the appropriation of these animals as heraldic symbols of royalty and nobility. These are the animals that adorn national imperial seals, as we see attributed to the Roman Empire, the British Imperial Empire, the United States, and so on. An act of post-colonial domination over the old world, the appropriation of its symbolism and eradication of its history through falsified narrative. Furthermore, the chemical, alchemical, and cosmological symbol used to represent Mercury is immediately recognizable for its conflation of two of the most widely used symbols throughout history and culture. That is, the cross and the crescent moon. It is openly acknowledged that at one point, all religious symbolism predated its current religious use and application, and belonged to another culture and represented something different during different historical eras. But just because this is openly declared does not mean it makes any sense. Were our historical ancestors and their own historical ancestors really that uninspired that they needed to recycle already established symbols? Or are we not being told the truth once again? The conflation of Christian and Islamic symbolism and culture is so prevalent across our realm that upon closer inspection, it begins to appear quite absurd. If we are to believe the official historical narrative, that is. If we believe the narrative of the Crusades and Ottoman Habsburg Wars, of the continual warring between West and East, then the presence of the crescent symbolism displayed on many so-called medieval European coats of arms and crests indeed makes no sense. Perhaps this is just more cultural appropriation, but the narrative becomes very unconvincing when we turn our attention to the structures themselves. Why was the Hagia Sophia Holy Grand Mosque originally constructed as the Church of Hagia Sophia by the so-called Roman Empire? It remained a church, we are told, for almost 1,000 years. Its 4 minarets were constructed after the Ottoman Empire took the region. But look at its original design. It does not resemble a traditional cathedral whatsoever. And we see this over and over again. The Cathedral of Cordoba in Spain, originally erected as a mosque in the 8th century, and then converted to a cathedral in the 13th century.
When I went to Spain with a friend, she and I, like, we rented a vehicle and we like drove all over Spain. It was gorgeous, and we looked at a lot of these different places, like museums, like locations of like where there was advanced infrastructure, and I saw that like there's like so many places where you've got like a melange of these different religions with the colors used, the designs, the symbols and stuff like that, like even within like the same areas. And yeah, it was all very fascinating to me.
We see right here the conflation of both styles of East and West. Yeah. Interestingly, the structure also features the red and white striped arches, indicative of power stations that we find throughout so many impossible structures. And even without their unconvincing narratives of structures passing between cultures, we still see the presence of both styles in many structures that do not have this narrative attached to them. St. Mark's Basilica and the Doge's Palace in Venice look extremely Eastern, as does the Brighton Pavilion in England. These structures were impossible for all of those, East and West, in the official narrative, unless they had advanced technology, which the narrative tells us they did not. The official narrative tells us tales of architects being inspired and influenced by the structures of East and West alike. But remember, at the time these structures were built, the people didn't have accessible transportation. Journeying between continents and countries took weeks, and they had no cameras to document the structures in order to be able to replicate them with such accuracy in the first place. Why don't synagogues have their own unique particular style, like mosques and cathedrals? We see this fusion of architectural style everywhere. We see water pumping stations that resemble cathedrals. We see water towers that resemble castle turrets. We see cathedrals that also resemble official government buildings. All these structures belong to one whole, unified civilization. That's why we find so many ruined cathedrals in the Middle East. They were destroyed and ruined during the Great Reset and after to solidify the falsified narrative. That's why we see the crescent moon in old 19th century photographs in areas it should not be. This is Brazil. Look closer. Even today, Brazil's Muslim population comprises a total of 1% of the country. So why is this crescent present at the top of one of these antennas in the 19th century? Why is it present in San Francisco in 1905? Why do we see many structural antennas composed of both the cross and crescent moon? In many of the old photographs, we see many structures without any religious symbolism, but just standard antennas. And what about all the unusual antennas we see? Many of the antennas functioned as symmetrical instruments to enhance ether extraction and to transmit energy to other antennas. They were never signs of different religious factions in the old world. They were most likely later designated these meanings to fracture the unification of the old world and its understanding of God. Even the mainstream narrative admits that it was not until the 19th century that the crescent moon even became associated with the Ottoman Empire. And it wasn't until 1950 that the symbol became the emblem of Islam. The symbols of the crescent and cross are much more complex than most realize. In the context of the antennas, they are likely a symbolic homage to the alchemical mercury that made them function in the first place. But the crescent and cross also have broader implications that are related to the holy, energetic, and ethereal workings of our realm. We will be returning to these symbols later. This is not meant to discredit the meaning of these symbols today. Symbols evolve over time, but this evolution was carefully orchestrated by our controllers. It is also not to discredit God, and this point is crucial. I understand that much of this may trigger some people, but it is imperative to understand that religion, in an institutional sense, was created by our controllers as a means of control. Many religious organizations today are corrupt and use religion as a front when their true allegiance lies with the psychopathic controllers of our realm. Religion was an essential.
There are even even with Adolf Hitler, there are accounts and letters and things like that were verified where he was telling people, like even within his own military, high-level military, to pretend that they were religious figures all over the country and all over Europe. And then he would they would essentially be spies, right? So when you would go to confession, these guys would be like taking friggin' notes, right, and sending this information back. And so it's been corrupted, right? And there's so many reasons why there's an absolute monarchy, and the Vatican City is considered its own country with its own rules and laws, and has like people from Sweden that are protecting them and all this stuff, and the underground tunneling systems and the libraries and the archives that they have underneath the Vatican. Just so much stuff that's being hidden from us. And again, this has been for years. And even people within occult groups or groups like the Freemasons, for example, they've also said that once you get to a higher level, sometimes they also employ you as, again, religious figures all over the US and the world. And then again, that's your way inside these different groups. And I've shared videos of that and witness accounts, and even from like Freemasons themselves admitting this. And so it's not new.
Tool of deception to justify the old world's infrastructure. Religion is not synonymous with an understanding of God, faith, and prayer. And it is also not to discredit the life of the Son of God. No, and this is crucial, and you will see why later in our journey. And in many a sense, this is what Christ tried to teach people, to see through the deception and manipulation. And when thou prayest, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen of men. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. You see, the scriptures are more accurate than most understand. They are at once historical accounts, instruction manuals for living, and sacred texts of prophecy. There are a handful of texts that are so important that the enemy has been desperately trying to steer people away from them in recent times. And you will see why this is of utmost importance later in our journey. Stay with me, the best is yet to come. And it doesn't end there. The basis for the alchemical symbol of Mercury, we are told, was a caduceus. And we see the caduceus throughout the remains of the old world. Another symbol appropriated by the enemy, adorning many coat of arms and adopted by centralized, corrupted medical industries that have been responsible for mass crimes against humanity that continues today. It is not a coincidence that the same mercury that the symbol represented is injected into humans via vaccines to disrupt their entire methylation cycle resulting in widespread autism and a whole host of neurological and metabolic disorders. The caduceus illustrates clearly how both Roman and ancient Greek mythology serve the enemy as a tool of deception. In Roman mythology, the caduceus staff was carried in the left hand of the god Mercury. The Roman Mercury was the god of financial gain, commerce, communication, and messages. In Greek mythology, the staff is carried by Hermes. Hermes was the god of travelers, merchants, and commerce. The fabricated mythologies allowed the enemy to obscure the caduceus's true association with the elemental Mercury, while also permitting them the usual sick, hiding in plain sight mocking ritual by linking their medical industries with the god of financial gain and commerce. As Falconelli writes, the snake indicates the incisive and dissolving nature of Mercury. This reptile is the aspect of Mercury in its first state, and the golden wand is a corporeal sulfur added to it. It is the philosophical Mercury and the caduceus as its symbol. Not only does the caduceus...
So the caduceus, again, like it's more about finances and commerce and stuff like that, but the rod of Asclepius is the correct symbol in possibly. So the rod of Asclepius, a symbol of healing and medicine that depicts a rod with a snake wrapped around it. It is also known as the staff of Asclepius. Esculapius. Wow, that took me a long time. The rod of Asclepius is a symbol from Greek mythology. It may have originated thousands of years ago in ancient Greece. One theory for its origin is that it's based on the guinea worm, a parasite that was removed by wandering around a stick. I don't know about that. No, I don't think that. I think it's connected to acid and healing. And anyway. The rod of Asclepius is often confused with the caduceus, which is the staff of Hermes, the Greek messenger god. Sometimes wings. The caduceus has been used incorrectly as a medical symbol for over a century. That's true. It's even in hospitals and stuff like that. It's just interesting. Yeah, I find this documentary, whatever this is, so interesting, and I hope you do as well.
Caduceus represent the mercury elixir, essential for the transmission of electromagnetic energy, but the dueling snakes form a spot.
And I just wanted to point out that on this day in history, 1773, Captain James Cook becomes the first to cross the Antarctic Circle, 66 degrees 33 south latitude. And so you got the 66 and the 33 in there. In 1873, Modoc warriors defeat the United States Army in the first battle of the Stronghold, a part of the Modoc War. 1912, Captain Robert Scott's expedition arrives at the South Pole 1 month after Roald Amundsen. It's just very interesting that on this day, and you get the 7-Eleven on this day, 1920, first day of prohibition of alcohol comes into effect in the U.S. as a result of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution. 1946, the United Nations Security Council holds its first meeting at Westminster Central Hall in Westminster, England. Operation Desert Storm begins with U.S.-led coalition forces bombing Iraq during the Gulf War. 1991. Famous birthdays: Benjamin Franklin, Al Capone, Muhammad Ali, James Earl Jones. Famous deaths: George Bancroft, Juliet Gordon Lowe. Benjamin Franklin, I don't know if I already said that. Yeah, I did. Okay, anyway, just very interesting stuff.
Spiral coil, representative of the energy pathway, and the vortex. The rod represents the gold and sulfur, but it is also reminiscent of the antennas themselves. And just as the mythologies hide in plain sight, the wings here represent the connection, the communication, the messages, the signals between antennas in the electromagnetic grid, and also the connection between the antennas and the ether itself. After all, the Roman god Mercury was known as the messenger of the gods. And it's hiding in plain sight throughout alchemical art and illustration. We see the eagle and the lion, we see the caduceus, and we see similar geometries and objects that adorn the top of the old world structures. And yet it is still difficult to imagine the energy grid. And even more difficult to imagine is the level of labor required to remove all the engines and vessels, to destroy and hide enough of the old world and to begin rewriting history in order for the Great Reset to have been a success. What we are seeing in the 19th and early 20th century is the final stages of the reset. There was a transitory period, and like any transition phase, the period still utilized some of the old world's technology that it was trying to phase out. And like I said, the enemy is lazy. They really should have done away with these photographs and footage. Look.
There's even a, actually, I'll share that. I was going to share some of my Spain trip. A road trip. Heading towards Monaco. We're on a hike. Old buildings. Not made from wood. Just dogs on the road. Yeah, that was a fun hike. That was interesting to me. This was 2019. Beautiful scenery. Gorgeous mountains overlooking the town. And a running bathtub. Found a bathtub. You were pretty high up. Las Cajoras Wilderness.
Killed that, and you're amazing.
Really pretty. That's her, who I went with. This was cool. Of course, we explored. No, this was so fun. Yeah. Yeah, so this is also Spain. Oranges. Just looking at old buildings, like big doors. And I was like, those are really big. Yeah. And where the handles are too, like higher. It was just very interesting. Different designs on the roads. I went to the Alhambra. That was incredible. I'll show you this old infrastructure again. This like advanced civilization absolutely built those. Look at this. 2019. I was sharing this. I mean earlier as well, obviously. And yeah, so this is cave living gypsies. This was us going in the like these are actually in the mountains, I guess. Very old. That's me in the mirror. Yeah. Culture, artwork really tells a lot about the history of certain areas. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. Look at that. This is also really pretty. Mountains. Showing these buildings too. Mills. Anyway, did a lot. Quote book. Yeah. Look at this. Yeah, this was also very interesting. Look at the doors. Got that. All stone or whatever you want to call it. I'm blasting through these. Like, so if you want to take a look at my Instagram, you're gonna have to type out my name in full, Don189. Sorry, Don Dussault. DAWNDUSSAULT. Like, look at these. Like, look at all this. It was just so fascinating. And the video that you just saw, a definite mix of the cultures. Yeah, you can like zoom in and sharing the roofing. To me, that was very important. So even in 2008, when I went to Europe, I went to 10 different countries. I did the exact same thing. I did a lot of adventures out in the outback and like even quadding and hiking and stuff like that. But I also went to like every single art gallery, museum, any type of like monument or historical area. And I just like was fascinated with this stuff. And it's just all very, I went to Egypt for my HLTA 2009, 2010 period. And I'm going to spend almost a month there. And I went all over Egypt and like, including going on a catamaran on the Nile and all like the temples and ruins and pyramids and oh God, I'm forgetting what the name of it is. Was it Abu Simbel? I went to Dahab too, went snorkeling. And anyway, I wanted to get on here for a reason. I was going to share something on Instagram. But I forget. I got on a tangent with Spain. Oh yes, now I remember. I don't know if I'll still have it up, but I was like a light filament. Yeah, okay, it's still up. Okay. And I did verify this, so this is actually true. Okay, so in 1901, an eternal light bulb was connected in California. It still hasn't gone out today. 123 years later, it is cited as strong evidence of how products are purposely made not to last in modern technologies. And so, like, we should be using this type of technology like we were using over 100 years ago. And again, we're not, because people are profiting off of like selling more and more light bulbs or so many different products, and it's so wasteful. And this is again what's causing a lot of pollution in the world and heating and stuff like that. Monopoly, oil company monopoly. Oh yeah, and in Biden's address too, he's talking about the dangers of oligarchies, and it's just like the hypocrisy in that statement too when he's talking about the tech in industrial complex. When like in California, huge tech industry there, and they make a lot of friggin' money, and a lot of these are Democrat and or fun Democrats, right? Like very left-leaning, radical leftist companies and or people. And so again, Ben, like it's just the hypocrisy of everything that Joe Biden said yesterday or whenever it was. It was ridiculous, and the fear mongering for Americans was just like again the hypocrisy. And he's trying to commit over 98% of the budget under President Trump before he even gets in, before his inauguration on the 20th, and I guess 3 days from now. And again, this stuff is such bullshit. And so he's going to be tied up trying to reverse policies and bills and stuff like that he's pushing, and commitments to funding that he's committing. And so again, it's just like he's everything to like not help, right? Again, like another slap in the face to Americans, just like Justin Trudeau proroguing government and resigning the month that he was going to be held up for a vote of non-confidence and a carbon tax election. And so again, like they just, even until the very fucking end, it's all about them and the people who support and fund them. And anyways, they're just showing who they are. Don't care about us. Luna Park.
Whoa. Most of these images were taken during the World's Fairs of the 19th century and at the turn of the 20th century. Any electrician will testify to just how impossible illumination in this time period and on this scale would be. What an absolute nightmare to wire. But they didn't need complex wiring, did they? How did they have moving sidewalks during this period? We also see this technology on display in the burgeoning American amusement parks of the early 20th century. There is a reason they called them electric parks. In fact, the reference to electricity can be found everywhere amongst repurposed old world sites, even in the unlikeliest of places. Even in this transition phase of the reset, these environments look glorious. This is with most of the water grid already destroyed. Just imagine what they were able to achieve. So many of the major symbolic icons of our time can be traced back to the mercury that made this electromagnetic, technological old world possible in the first place. Interestingly, in his reading of Offerus, or St. Christopher, as a mercurial carrier, Falconelli takes his Masonic trickery of half-truths and deceptions to the limit. He begins discussing Offerus's belt as depicted by Julian Champagne, whose painting of Offerus hangs in Jean Lamante's mansion, what Falconelli calls one of the most attractive and rare philosophical residences. The painting depicts Offerus wearing a belt stitched with crisscross lines. It is important to note that none of the other famous artistic renditions of Offerus depict him wearing this belt. Falconelli exclaims that the artist did even better than the rest. Under the inspiration of the Hermetic scientist who has commissioned the painting, the artist depicted Offerus tightened by a wide belt at the level of his abdomen. It is this belt, Falconelli writes, that gives St. Christopher his true esoteric character. Listen very carefully to what he states next. According to some documents kept in the archives of the Lallement mansion, we know that Jean Lallement belonged to the alchemical brotherhood of the Knights of the Round Table. What we are going to say here cannot be taught. Offerus's belt is the sign that all philosophers recognize as the external mark that indicates the extreme intrinsic purity of their mercurial substance. It is a sign that the old authors called the Seal of Hermes, the Star of the Magi, the Bear Cub, the constellation in which the pole star is found. Comparing Ophiuchus's belt and the Bear constellation by the pole star, or what is known as Ursa Major, or the Big Dipper, at first provides no insight as to what Falconelli is referring to. Is this just a rambling of an insane cryptic mason, or are we missing something? But if you begin to trace a pattern on the belt, then another hidden and familiar pattern begins to emerge within the pattern itself. When documented throughout the year, at each season, the Big Dipper constellation also forms this pattern, the symbol of the swastika. A now infamous symbol of evil, what many do not know is that according to the official narrative, the swastika was one of the most widely used symbols throughout history and different cultures. It is an important symbol in Asian countries, representing Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. It was used by the so-called ancient Greeks and Romans, the Druids, the Celts, Native Americans, early Christians, and so on. We see it in mosaics, rock churches, bracelets, rose windows, crosses, pottery, clothing, and flags. We see it everywhere throughout time and culture. Interestingly, Swedish and Norwegian power companies used the symbol in the late 1800s and early 1900s to represent electric power stations and hydroelectric stations. This connection cannot be purely coincidental. The task of erasing memory and history is not an easy feat. It takes time. Out of all the symbols, this is the one that the enemy had to corrupt and dilute the most by appropriation. Not just because of its now lost association with electromagnetism, but because, as Falconelli let slip, its original association with Mercury's involvement in the old world's power grid.
I don't know if he's going to mention the symbol, like where it's created with, like the Polaris, and then during the different equinoxes and solstices, that's what the Big Dipper, like the shape that it makes, like during those key times. So on or around the 20th of March of every year, we have the spring equinox, again, depending on if it's a leap year or a non-leap year. And then on or around the 21st of June, 22nd of September, or the 21st of December. And so equinoxes and solstices. And so looking at the luminaries, like they are used in so many different texts, and they're being misrepresented, including Mithras, Dionysus, Horus, Krishna, Jesus, Apollo, and others being representations of the sun, the great light. And then the moon, Selene, Luna, Artemis, Diane, Miriam, and also other figures throughout history as well.
Like the Caduceus' spiraling snakes, it depicts a vortex that Mercury produces in the presence of electromagnetism. The swastika is the vortex. It also represents another vortex, the one below Polaris and the Big Dipper, at the center. The same vortex that NASA has teased hiding in plain sight here on Earth and in their representation of other planets' poles. It is the same vortex that Mercator and others documented in maps and writing, the whirlpool surrounding Rupes Nigra and located at the North Pole. Interestingly, scientists have recently discovered large natural stores of the so-called toxin mercury at the North Pole. They are worried about it melting and causing toxicity. Of course they are. As Kevin Schaefer writes in the National Geographic article, it turns out that not only is there mercury in permafrost, but the Arctic is also the biggest pool of mercury on the planet. Is this another mocking on their behalf, or is there actually a vast amount of mercury at the north? We will return to this much later in our journey. The noble metals and their original location on Earth are very important, and it is the scriptures that hold the answer. The old world knew. They knew the Earth they walked upon better than anyone else. They knew the alchemical metals, gold, iron, copper, mercury, and so on, could be fused in ways that allowed them to access the ethereal electromagnetic energy. They knew that Offerus, the alchemical Mercury, could elevate the Christ, the alchemical gold, and carry him to the masses. It is not a coincidence that the path Offerus carried Christ was across the river, across water. The legend of Offerus is a symbolic and metaphoric totality of the old world's energy system. You have a question, and I have a feeling I know what you're going to say. You want to ask about the maps, Mercator and such. If they have fabricated history, distorted so much symbolic meaning, and lied about those that came before, how can we trust these old maps and accounts of the North? How do we know that Hyperborea is a real place and that there is a vortex in the center? That's the spirit, an important question. Unfortunately, we cannot trust the maps, and I need to show you why. And it's now time to talk about the clocks. For you see, there is another map, hidden and long forgotten, the oldest map of them all. And it's not perfect by any means, but it's all we have. Come, it's time to lift another veil. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward path had been lost. And during my journey, as I made my way through the tangled labyrinthine paths of deception, looking for the center of truth, I met a brilliant woman who taught me many a flat fact. But out of all of her flat facts, it was one fact that struck a chord. She showed me the maps of old and asked me to find the key anomaly, the one error that all maps contain. I pointed to the varying representations of unknown land masses, to Hyperborea. She shook her head. No, find the glitch. We live on a flat plane. Our world is an electromagnetic terrarium, surrounded by an ethereal sea of water. And like all terrariums, after initial creation, they begin to form their own self-sustaining atmosphere. The sun and the moon journey above our flat realm in concentric spirals. There are 5 prominent circles of latitude, we are told. We have the Arctic Circle, closest to the center, the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees latitude in the northern hemisphere, the equator at 0 degree latitude, the Tropic of Capricorn at 23.5 degrees latitude in the southern hemisphere, and the Antarctic Circle. The sun journeys from the equator at the March equinox up in concentric spirals to the Tropic of Cancer. When the sun is in this position, the northern hemisphere experiences summer and the southern hemisphere experiences winter, after which the sun turns and begins making its way back to the equator. The word tropic stems from the Latin word tropicus.
He's giving you a top-down view. So regardless of what this was, like he's giving you a top-down view of what could possibly be a closer version of what this cosmos is. So just to be clear, I'll keep saying this, we do not have an accurate map in any regard. Okay, so even Google Earth, right? We continue to discover new regions, and we know that Google Earth, even with Greenland being covered with snow and stuff like that, that's incorrect. The size is incorrect. Like the continent sizes, like Africa, for example, and the U.S. and other areas, there's size distortions. If you look at Peterson's projection map or Robinson's projection map, and then even finding again like 3,000 or so like islands off the coast of Japan and stuff like that, it's just there's no accurate maps, unfortunately.
Which means pertaining to a turn. The sun journeys back, taking the same concentric spiral path, and reaches the equator again. It then keeps going and reaches the Tropic of Capricorn. When the sun is in this position, the southern hemisphere experiences summer, and the northern hemisphere experiences winter. After a time, the sun turns and begins making its way back to the equator for the March equinox. The equinox occurs when the sun is journeying the circle of the equator, and those living along this line of latitude will see the sun directly overhead at a 90-degree angle at solar noon. The March equinox marks the season of spring in the northern hemisphere, and the September equinox marks the season of autumn. If you live in the southern hemisphere, this is reversed, and the September equinox marks spring and the March equinox autumn. It is important to note that the sun never reaches the Arctic Circle, nor does it reach the Antarctic Circle. It never reaches the poles. It journeys to the tropic circles and then turns back. The point at which the sun reaches its most northerly and southerly excursion relative to the equator is called the solstice. Solstice comes from the Latin word solstitium, which means point at which the sun seems to stand still. And indeed, many do note that the sun seems to stop on the solstices. And this is because, in a sense, it does. It reaches the most northerly and southerly excursion and turns back.
Like it's in the same position for 3 days during the solstices, whether it's the Tropic of Cancer at the northernmost extreme or the Tropic of Capricorn at the southernmost extreme. If you're a globe earther, you think that the Tropic of Capricorn is the same size as Cancer. It's on the underside of the globe, with the south being there and this being Antarctic right here, like, but underneath the globe, right? Okay, so I can steel man that too. And anyway.
But why the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn? Who names these circles of latitude? Our historical ancestors did. They had clocks that not only told them the seconds of the hour, the hours in the day, but also the moment of dusk and dawn and the current phase of the moon. Their clocks understood the true time, the bigger picture. They understood the celestial clock. The stars above us, beyond our firmament, and in the waters above, revolve at a constant 1 degree every 4 minutes, from east to west, that is, anti-clockwise. This means they revolve at 15 degrees each hour. 15 degrees multiplied by 24 hours is 360, a full circle.
And when the sun starts rising again from the lowest south latitude, when you map it out, it does a sine wave. They're probably going to get into this as well. If they don't, I will. But on or around the 21st of December or the 22nd of December, depending on if it's a leap year or a non-leap year, we experience the winter solstice. And so like that's when it's at its lowest point, when people within the northern regions experience the shortest amount of day, the longest amount of night, and the sun appears to be dead, right? Because it's rising and setting at the same time for like those 3 days at the lowest point, Tropic of Capricorn. And then on the third day, 3.5 days or whatever it is, on the 25th of December, the sun is reborn, where it starts traveling back towards the equatorial circuit or ring or belt, whatever you want to call it, and where we start experiencing a little bit longer days finally from its lowest point. And depending on if it's a leap year or non-leap year, the 25th of December is the 360th day of the year. So, and also with the birth of Jesus Christ and all of this stuff, I think this is all very much related again to the sun and its travel path. And if he gets into it, I'm sorry.
Stars above are fixed. They do not stray from their anti-clockwise journey, but revolve and complete a full circle every day. Our ancient historical ancestors knew this. They assigned the stars above into fixed constellations.
Also, another fun fact about the sun as well, with the connection with us humans, is on the spring equinox. I don't know if it's a leap year or not a leap year. I keep on having to say that. But anyways, the 20th of March, the spring equinox, if you make a baby, if you have sex during that time, conceive a baby, the due date would be the 25th of December. So 20th of March, if you conceived, then on like your due date would be 25th of December. So again, very interesting with our connection to this great light.
They divided the 360-degree circle of the sky above into 12 divisional arcs of 30 degrees, in which each constellation of the zodiac resides in. They designated each constellation in each 30-degree arc with an anthropomorphic symbol, most of which are animals. Zodiac is an interesting word. Zodiac, the arcs of the zoo. Yes, the parallels with Noah's Ark are strikingly obvious. Each constellation of the zodiac moves from its fixed position in the waters above at 1 degree every 72 years. The stars in the circle above us are fixed in their positions, but every 72 years, the entire circle shifts 1 degree. This is what is called the precession of the equinox. Remember, each arc is 30 degrees. If we multiply 72 with 30, we get 2,160 years. It takes 2,160 years for the circle above to shift one whole arc. Astronomers call this an age, and this is what is meant by entering or the dawn of a new age. As Wikipedia tells us, the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn were named such because many years ago, in the days before Christ, the days before BC, the sun was in the constellation of Cancer at the June solstice, and the sun was in the constellation of Capricorn at the December solstice. What does it mean for the sun to be in a given constellation during the solstice? It means a position of the sun in the sky at solar noon. Of course, during solar noon, we would not actually be able to see the stars in the firmament beyond. Therefore, to discern the sun's position relative to the constellations requires either 1, a thorough understanding of the stars and their positions above. Our ancient ancestors, we are told, created star charts and used devices such as astrolabes. Or 2, computer technology that is able to map and overlap the sun's position against the backdrop of the stars and constellations at solar noon. The sun's presence in the constellation of a given zodiac sign means exactly as it sounds. At solar noon, on the day of the solstice, the sun should be in front of a given constellation. Look closer at the zodiac wheel featured on the dial of these clocks. Here we see that both the constellations of Cancer and Capricorn are polar opposites to one another. These are the names of the 2 lines of latitude on the maps, and that we use to discern the sun's most northerly and southerly excursion above our flat plane. All historical cartographic world maps display both these circles of latitude as Cancer and Capricorn. We see it here on Mercator's maps, on the Ortelius, on the Rouge, on the Urbano Monte. Cartographic maps combine so-called science with aesthetics to communicate spatial information effectively. They strive to be accurate. And we still use this designation of Cancer and Capricorn for these circles of latitude on our cartographic maps today. Google Earth also uses these designations. But why? As Wikipedia states, when this line of latitude was named in the last centuries BC, the sun was in the constellation Cancer at the June solstice, the time each year that the sun reaches its zenith at this latitude. Similarly, when the Tropic of Capricorn was named, the sun was in the constellation of Capricorn at the December solstice. And the wheel of the zodiac makes this very easy to understand. For instance, if the sun is in any given constellation at solar noon on the June solstice, then its counterpart on the December solstice will always be in the constellation opposite to the June sign. And this is represented with a straight vertical line. If, for instance, the sun was in the constellation of Aries at the June solstice, then it will appear in the constellation of Libra in the December solstice. If the sun was in the constellation of Pisces at the June solstice, then it will be in the constellation of Virgo during the December solstice. These signs are, in a sense, bound in their opposition to one another. And this is where it becomes interesting. The vertical line here represents the tropic circles and their respective constellations during the solstices, but they are governed by another circle of latitude, the equator. On the wheel, this is represented by the horizontal line, and you'll see that the lines form a cross. The equator and the tropic circles are bound in unison by this cross. Remember, the zodiac is the clock face of the circle of stars above us. When one turns anti-clockwise, the rest follow. And just like the signs of the solstices, the left hand of the horizontal line here represents the constellation the sun is in during the March equinox, and the right-hand side representative of the sign during the September equinox. And it is the left-hand side of the cross, the March equinox, or what is referred to as the vernal equinox, and its zodiac sign, which acts as a reference point for the entire celestial coordinate system. It's called the first point of Aries. The naming of this reference point after the sign Aries is arbitrary, or so they say. We also use it as a reference point for naming the age we are in. And if we start in the age of Aries, we can illustrate the precession of the equinox and the designation of constellations to their corresponding circles of latitude quite clearly. For instance, if the sun is in the constellation of Aries during the March equinox, then we have the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. We also see that the sun will be in the constellation of Libra during the September equinox. Now the stars above us are revolving anti-clockwise from their usual fixed positions at 1 degree every 72 years, and a whole zodiac arc every 2,160 years. So let's jump 2,160 years to the age of Pisces. The sun is, of course, in Pisces during the March equinox. We have the Tropic of Gemini and Sagittarius, and the sun in Virgo during the September equinox. You'll no doubt have noticed that the wheel represented here turns clockwise, and that's because it's a representation of the constellations, as if your view was outside of the firmament and looking down on the stars. If you were standing underneath this wheel and looking up, it would rotate anti-clockwise. I am using the clockwise representation because it is the best way to illustrate the precession of the equinox. This rotation keeps shifting one arc every 2,160 years until the wheel makes a full circle, or what is known as a great year. Why is this important? What we see here, and what the mainstream narrative confirms, is that the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn occurred during the age of Aries. For the last 2,000 years or so, we have been in the age of Pisces. Remember, an age lasts for roughly 2,160 years. And we are now on the cusp of entering into the age of Aquarius. On June 2020, during the solstice, the sun entered the border of Taurus, and therefore the transition has already begun. And Google will tell you this yourself if you search. A new age, or a precession of 30 degrees into a new constellation on the March equinox, is not some new age, pseudo-spiritual fantasy of astrologists and yogis alike. It is an astronomical law of the stars above in the firmament, and you can track it yourself every equinox and solstice. It is a critical and integral component in the function of our realm. If we are entering the age of Aquarius, then that means that the sun has not been in the constellation of Cancer or Capricorn during the solstice for over 2,000 years, when our realm was in the age of Aries. All the old and current cartographic maps, and even Google Earth, represent these circles of latitude as the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. There are no maps that present the tropic lines correctly, as they should be in the age of Pisces, our current age. Wikipedia and other mainstream narratives of deception tell us that our ancient historical ancestors of horse and cart and copper chisels named these circles of latitude in the times of BC, and no one in the course of history that followed bothered to change the names of the tropics to their accurate designation. We are in the age of Pisces, and have been for over 2,000 years. The circles of latitude should be called the Tropic of Gemini and the Tropic of Sagittarius. And so what? What's in a name? But this brilliant lady who taught me this flat fact was patient. What's in a name? Everything. And until she said it, I didn't realize how stupid I'd been to overlook this. Maps are not just pretty projections of the landmass on Earth. They are practical instruments of navigation. Our ancient historical ancestors, we are told, depended on celestial navigation, on the position of the stars in the firmament above to guide their way when at sea. Follow the North Star. And if perchance their compasses failed, then knowing the map of the stars above.
Actually, that is a good point from Rumble again. There are people that believe that the UN map is, I've shared that map before as well, that it's like a more accurate representation of the of this Earth plane, and then the moon. So there are people that believe that the moon does project some kind of like an X-ray or like some kind of projection of the land masses on Earth when you take a look at this. I think he actually gets into this possibly in here. So I know I'm going over. This is a really long video again, but yeah, it's interesting.
Would be critical. Believing that our ancestors just continue to use a designation of Cancer and Capricorn for the tropics that was established by their own historical ancestors who belong to a different age entirely is absurd. Celestial.
And the moon is closest to the sun, and it's ruled by Leo. But anyway, it's closest to the sun, and Saturn is furthest away. Again, from my interpretation of the original luminaries and stuff like that in their place, and stuff like that. So Saturn, which rules over Capricorn and Aquarius, and so you've got the Tropic of Capricorn being the furthest away from the sun, and during certain periods, and then you've got the moon that's possibly closest. Anyway.
Navigation would have been an essential skill set for anyone navigating their way across the oceans. And if they did have advanced technology, like we have our computers and GPS systems, then would they really be that lazy and neglectful to not bother designating the tropic circles to their correct constellation titles?
And then if you look at a cross, if you map out the astrological signs, depending on like if Aries is east, if you've got Aries east, a cardinal point, you've got Libra west at 6 a.m., 6 p.m., east and west, equinoxes, and equal amount of day and night. And then you've got Cancer at the Capricorn at the top. Again, when we experience like midnight also on the clock, Capricorn at the top, and then you've got Cancer at the bottom, and that's at 12 a.m., 12 p.m., and south and north. And I believe that, again, when you map that out, that's where you have the cross. And again, this has a lot to do with astrotheosophy and the luminaries and all of these allegories and stuff like that we have. And so even with Jesus and the apostles, there were 12 apostles, and there's 12 zodiac signs or images.
Did they really invest so much time building the most advanced astronomical clocks only to neglect their maps? No, they did not. All these historical maps present designations for the tropic circles of latitude that are well over 2,000 years old. Why? And why are we still using this designation today? For you see, these maps, and all our maps, including Google Earth, are tools of deception. Where are the maps from the age of Pisces? The maps of the last 2,000 years? And could these maps actually be over 2,000 years old? It seems like someone does not want us to know the age we reside in, or wants to distract us from finding out just how important the precession of the equinox really is. This brilliant lady's flat fact leaves us with the following conclusions. The maps, all of them, Mercator and so on, are either 1. Original maps that belong to a period that occurred thousands of years ago and have been given false dates and narratives surrounding their creation. 2. Manipulated copies and versions of original maps that were created over 2,160 years ago. Or 3. They are all fake and created during the Great Reset of the last few hundred years to generate a false history and timeline and solidify the false historical narrative and the rise of Galilean heliocentricity. Out of all of these options, the second and the third are most likely. Cartographic world maps are not easy documents to create and establish. They require a solid understanding of our Earth's size and shape. They require a thorough understanding of the circles of latitude that are integral to the workings of our world. They require a complex understanding of the continents and land masses. These maps are likely manipulated duplications of maps thousands of years old or completely fake. And we do see signs of manipulation, especially in regard to the landmass known as Hyperborea. We see Hyperborea in various maps of varying styles, and we are told that these are from the 16th century. But towards the 17th century, we see Hyperborea start to be erased from the maps. We see unknown land masses that are present in some of these old maps vanish entirely. And then it dawned on me, the message of this flat fact. We have no trustworthy maps, not a single one. We have no reliable source to show us the bigger picture of the realm we inhabit. I continued my journey, and as I ventured deeper into the forest, the path to the center that led me thus far was gone, and I could not turn back. and there lay no path in front of me. I became truly lost. How to know where you are going if you don't know where you are in the first place, if you don't have a map? All historical waymarks that I had invested some degree of trust in before were now completely unreliable and questionable. How much had been edited by the controllers? How much truth was left? What if all the maps were fake? Why are they hiding the maps of the last 2,000 years? We do not have one single accurate or honest world map. And like in all moments of being lost, right before despair takes hold, an unforeseen circumstance arose that set me back on course. I stumbled through thick overgrowth and out into a moonlit clearing with a small lake. At this clearing, I met a mysterious figure named Sturgios. I told him I was lost, and he told me to come and look into the lake. He told me to watch the water. What did I see? He asked. Myself, I replied, my reflection rippling and glistening in the moonlight. Mirror, mirror, look beyond yourself, he said. What do you see? And there it was, just as it had always been. Mirror, mirror, way up high. Mirror, mirror in the sky. Mirror, mirror, oh how they lie.
I remember watching this in 2000. I think it was 2018 or no, 2019 maybe. When did this come out? Because it was shortly thereafter. Someone let me know. But anyways, while I watched this, it was very interesting to me. And so, like, I will reiterate from the beginning, I have never said that there's an official, true, flat Earth map out there that accurately depicts what this friggin' cosmos does. And so, but yeah, this is very interesting.
It cannot be. All this time, hiding in plain sight. A distorted, unreliable yet steadfast reflection. A quasi-photographic image of both our known world and what is this? This is the unknown world. Thank you, Sturgios, for all your work. Sturgios has mapped out each continent to the minutest detail. His work is meticulous. He has mapped time zones, seasons, flight paths, and distances. The first true flat Earth map. And it is of utmost importance, primarily due to the unknown landmass over here that Sturgios has named Terra Vista, after the Urbano Monte landmass of the same name. Why have we never heard of this land before? If the area here is our known world, then the realm is absolutely enormous. But wait a minute, Sturgios' presentation of our known world here maps the 5 prominent circles of latitude. We see the Arctic Circle, the tropics, the equator, and the Antarctic Circle. And Sturgios has mapped the sun's concentric journey around these circles of latitude, mapping seasons and time zones with the utmost precision and accuracy. So what's going on? The sun and moon cannot journey the entirety of the landmasses presented here because it would take too long. Does this landmass not have its own sun? Or perhaps the moon is not a map of the greater realm after all. But not so fast. We need to spend some time breaking down Sturgios' discovery here. How the image on the face of the moon was and is formed, when it was formed, and why are all questions that no one can answer. Nobody knows apart from the deceivers in higher places. But there are a lot of things hidden in plain sight that bring us a little closer to having a better understanding of this mysterious phenomenon. First of all is the nature of this image. It is a composite image. You are witnessing multiple images simultaneously when looking at the face of the moon. And these images are akin to a type of X-ray photography. There is also evidently a lot of distortion and optical illusion present in these images. No one can offer an explanation as to how this composite image has formed, nor has anyone ever provided a satisfactory answer as to what exactly the moon is. And rightly so, for if they could, we would not be in this mess in the first place. While most alternative views of the moon's true nature are rooted in nonsensical theories, such as those dreamt up by many deceivers and boys who never grew up, and who like the idea that aliens created the moon and there exist underground bases deep within its craters. There is one man, however, who spoke of the moon in the years leading up to the space race in the 60s, and who offered a very sensible insight. In 1965, Professor R. Foster challenged the corrupt scientific complex by stating that landing on the moon was an impossibility. It is an impossibility, according to Foster, because the moon is plasma and not solid. Here is what he said in an interview.
What is your theory? Well, it is by now rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is a plasma phenomena, cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation. Scientific views expressed all over the world now that the moon seems to be of a quite different nature from what was assumed.
But the Americans and Russians are thinking of landing men on it.
Well, that will never happen. Not on the moon. On Mars, on Venus, and other planets, yes, but the moon is definitely, as I assert, the plasma.
Like most that speak out, Foster was most likely controlled opposition. Notice that he says it is possible to land on other planets, but not the moon. it is likely that it was his task to introduce a half-truth that the moon is a plasma phenomenon, only for his claims to be, quote, debunked and proved wrong, unquote, a few years later, after they staged the moon landings. Since Foster's claim, however, our own access to technology in recent years has allowed us to investigate the moon in more detail. And through this, we see over and over again varying instances of the moon behaving in a way that debunks a lie that it is a ball of rock. We see with our own eyes a semi-transparent moon, either at night or while there is still daylight. We see the sky through the moon. Sometimes it is even possible to see stars directly through the moon. Many have repeatedly demonstrated that moonlight is colder than the shade at night, and therefore it cannot be reflected sunlight as it possesses no residual warmth. We also know that spherical objects do not reflect light. By the laws of reflection, the light concentrates into a highlight point and does not reflect. You can also see frequent crescent moons when both the moon and the sun are within close proximity of each other, meaning that it is impossible for the sun to be casting the Earth's shadow onto the moon. So if the moon is a plasma phenomenon, then how could this be formed in the first place? It is in the appropriation and demonization of the symbol of the swastika that we find some very interesting insights. The existence of a vast amount of historical literature and symbolism suggestive of a vortex opening in the center of our world is too prevalent to be coincidental. We have looked at much of this before, but strangely enough, in the years preceding and during the complete demonization and eradication of the swastika's association with the vortex, we find some additional information regarding this central vortex that is astonishing. In addition to the appropriation of the swastika as their emblem, the Nazis were also obsessed with a very similar symbol, that of the Black Sun. Prior to the rise of the Nazi regime, there existed an occult secret society within Germany called the Thule Society, sometimes alternatively pronounced Thule, that had sub-factions within it. One of these sub-societies, we are told, was the Black Sun Society. Influenced by the Rosicrucians and other Hermetic groups, the Thule Society placed special emphasis on the superiority of an alleged Aryan race with innate mystical powers. The Thule Society derived its name from a mythical northern country in Greek legend. Thule was supposedly a land located furthest north. Others have called it Hyperborea. The Thule Society believed, we are told, that an elder race, the Aryans, colonized our Earth, and they were located within the center of our hollow Earth. Admiral Byrd, the military Antarctic...
And I don't buy that. And I've given my... again, this is very interesting. I know this is long, but I'm actually like when I put it on full screen, sometimes I do go out and I take time with my dogs outside and I'm like getting more coffee or making a shake or whatever. And so, yeah, it's not like I'm just sitting here because I've already watched this before, but I mean, it's so fascinating. I always get more stuff within my head that reinforces other things when I look at it. But regarding Aries and Aryan, I've shown this before and I have it where like the number 7 is very much connected with 12, just like degrees of a circle, like the major degrees and stuff like that of a circle, it's days of the week, and the chakras, like I think I already said, and elements and colors, and then which luminaries rule over which zodiacal signs, or the Mazzalat or the Mazzaroth, whatever you want to call it. And so you have the sun rules over Leo for the zodiacal signs, and the element correlated with this is gold for the element, and then violet for the color for the colors of a rainbow as well. So this is also the colors of the rainbow, the chakras, all of that stuff, and it's correlated with the 7th chakra or the crown chakra, and with that correlated with Sunday or Dimanche for the day of the week. The 6th chakra connected to the 3rd eye and connected with Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, and the element correlated with it is silver, and the color of the rainbow is indigo, out of the rainbow colors. Monday or lundi for the day of the week, and then so you also got like Apollo, Mithras, Dionysus, Jesus representations of this, and then you've got like Selene and Luna, and countless others. Again, that this is all connected to these people that we talk about, like even these mythological people or religious people, it's correlated with, again, I think this. And so anyways, you got Virgo and Gemini ruled by Mercury. And then the element Mercury is correlated with this, the color blue. Wednesday or Woden's Day for day of the week, the 5th chakra, which is the throat chakra. And there's more connected with this as well. And the 4th chakra being the heart chakra, day of the week, Friday or vendredi. And then Wednesday, mercredi in French. Mercredi is Wednesday. And then so you even got like Mercury with that. And anyway, it's just like a lot of connections with the names of things as well. I'm going down. So anyways, you've got the luminary correlated with the all of this is Venus, who rules over Libra and Taurus. And then the element copper, the color green. And then keeping on going down, you've got the 3rd chakra, which is the solar plexus. Day of the week correlated with it is Tuesday or mardi. And then you've got iron for the element, and then the color yellow. So you've got Scorpio and Aries, and then the color connected with the same line being yellow. And so that's where I think that people think that like people that they call Aryans, I think it's derived from like Aries. And then when they say they're yellow, like they use the color yellow, I think it's because of this, like the color of the rainbow that's correlated with Mars actually, and then Aries and Scorpio. I think it's just again like just a misinterpretation, or again like people that knew about this, and again like they were making stories based on this. Anyways, we can go further down, but like even with like the 1st chakra or the root chakra and the day of the week correlated with it being Saturday. So you got lundi, mardi, mercredi, jeudi, vendredi, samedi. You got Capricorn and Aquarius is ruled over by Saturn, okay, which is a play on Satan. The element lead and the color red is correlated with this line or whatever you want to call it. And so when in the northern region where 90% of the population lives, you've got the winter months, and so this is when the sun enters Capricorn. This is during the winter solstice, and then goes into Aquarius. And during the winter months here, again, there's like more suffering, right? It's colder climates. You've got snow. Like people can freeze to death. Animals can freeze to death, or they hibernate, or they migrate. And you can't grow food during these periods. Like the trees that usually do harvest bear fruit, they don't bear fruit during these times. And so there's just a lot of, again, what we experience as hell, like this is during this period, I think. And then so you have Capricorn and Aquarius for these zodiac signs that are ruled over by Saturn or Satan. You've got it where Capricorn is represented by a goat and Aquarius is represented by a human. So that like also this Satan figure is also like half goat, half human. And then usually red, and there's usually fire and brimstone, which is usually when and then chattering of teeth and stuff like that. Like this is all connected to colder areas, right? Like you make fires because you're cold, right? You're not making fires because you're hot. Anyway, so I could go on a list with this. I could go on a tangent, about this further, but I won't. But there's just a lot of examples of different, again, figures throughout history, and there's a large connection with the Mazzaroth or the Mazzalat or the zodiacal belt, and the sun and the moon's travel path within that belt.
Arctic explorer also made reference to a hollow earth with an entrance at the North Pole. The Thor Society also believed that the black sun was a big ball of primer materia that existed in the center of the earth and emanated radiation in the form of vril energy. This energy has many names. Some have called it chi, astral light, odic forces, or orgone. In 1933, the main architect of the event known as the Holocaust, Heinrich Himmler, acquired Wewelsburg Castle, a wonderful piece of old world infrastructure and technology. He supposedly remodeled the castle, and in doing so imprinted the symbol of the black sun into the marble floor of what came to be known as the General's Hall. Much of what has surfaced regarding the German secret societies before and during the Nazi regime is deliberate misinformation, carefully controlled with the sole intention of distraction and demonization. The misinformation regarding these societies has served to further fuel the UFO and alien agenda, which many, such as Jordan Safer, David Wilcock, and Corey Good, have since latched onto and promoted. They are part of a controlled opposition agenda. They are liars. The sole intention of disclosing information regarding German secret societies was to yoke together a ridiculous concept of a superior alien Aryan race existing within our world's northern core, or opening at the center, with maniacal dictatorship that resulted in gruesome genocide. Or in other words, to make them seem crazier than they already were. The controllers of our realm had to appropriate the swastika and eradicate its symbolic association with the Earth's central electromagnetic and physical vortex. And while I do not think there exists a black sun underneath us, if the notion of this seems absurd and far-fetched, just remember that the majority of the world's population have already accepted that there is some kind of dark sphere beneath them, acting as a source of our world's electromagnetic energy. Heliocentrism has convinced so many that inside their little blue ball hoax, there exists a spherical core of solid iron at a temperature of over 5,000 degrees. Their own black sun. Interestingly, they never represent this iron core with the metal's usual black or dark grey colour associations in their illustrations, despite telling us it is a crystalline sphere of solid iron. Surrounding the iron solid core is an outer layer of molten iron, and it is because of this hot liquid iron, we are told, that the Earth has a magnetic toroidal field. And millions have accepted this, and these silly diagrams that resemble Satsumas, despite the hard fact that the furthest depth a human has ever drilled into the Earth is a mere 8 miles. The heliocentric model has to acknowledge an inner core energy source because it is in fact a reality, and our world cannot exist without it. It is likely that the notion of a black sun beneath us is more distraction, although it is not as absurd as the heliocentric Satsuma model. We will return to this later. What is important now, however, is that not only have we another instance of the concept of a black core at the center of our realm, and another reference to a central vortex and opening, but we also have reference to energy, or what the Thule Society called vril, radiating out of this opening. And if this is truly the case, then we have a theoretical model in which both the formation of the sun and moon makes complete sense. What I am going to try and convey now is complex, and I will do my best, but I need you first of all to forget every model of our Earth you have become familiar with. Things may not make sense at first, but by the end it will. Let's start with the realm and the firmament, and then a central opening. And now let's incorporate our known world, as outlined on the moon by Sturgios. And finally, let's add the source or electromagnetic coil beneath. Whether a magnetic rock or an electromagnetic coil, the source of our world's magnetic field is located at the center and beneath, and any source of intense electromagnetism would produce strong radiation. No one can say indefinitely, but it is highly likely that the concentrated plasma that we call the moon is a result of a unique form of radiation, similar to X-rays, that emanate from this source via an opening or vortex. X-rays, or very strong radiation beams, would, by the laws of physics, emanate from this central vortex in diverging straight lines. Like X-rays, they would also be invisible. The divergent beams would continue up until coming into contact with the firmament itself. X-ray beams differ from light beams and do not tend to reflect. X-rays are like a super powerful form of light, and because their wavelengths are shorter than ordinary light's wavelengths, it means their frequency is much higher. Because of this, X-rays can travel through objects that ordinary light cannot, and it means that X-rays are not reflected easily. There are not many materials that reflect, scatter, refract, or redirect X-rays. And while I'm not strictly saying that X-rays are the cause, any form of strong radiation beams would behave similarly, there do exist some materials that can reflect high energy rays, and it was a man named Lawrence Bragg in 1913 that discovered that crystalline structures reflect X-rays. That's right, crystalline structures, a crystalline firmament. Bragg reflection is used, for example, to focus monochromatic light, and there is a device called a monochromator that uses curved crystal mirrors to reflect X-rays to focus monochromatic light. Standard monochromators use a prism to break down the light. This is a very familiar image, and Wikipedia displays it for everyone to see. It is now associated with an infamous music album. What is the title of that album? They are telling us. This means we're right on track. Radiation beams reflected off of the crystal firmament would likely be redirected down, off-center, and into the ionosphere above our heads. The same ionosphere in which the ethereal electromagnetic energy was harvested from. It is here that the beams will converge and concentrate and generate the plasma phenomenon we call the moon. The idea of electromagnetic rays reflecting from the firmament and converging in the ionosphere may seem preposterous, but there are many homemade experiments you can conduct yourself to prove the power of concentrating light rays. As seen here, the rays of the sun reflected in the concave mirror are able to produce intense heat and start a fire. The reflected light rays focus into a point to generate energy. And remember, radiation...
So again, even with what's going on in Antarctica or what they're alleging to be the South Pole, like, is this reflected sunlight or not? Right? Like, these are questions we need to look at. And I know that Jaren's doing a video today, I think. Yeah, it's today on he's gonna attempt to debunk flat Earth. And anyways, it is what it is. But there's so many things to factor in and consider with, like, the sun's travel path, like the where it's reflected from where. If there's a dome, look at that. Look at so many. There's so many things to look at. I would like to know what the mountain chain is that they were recording from or beyond.
Beams akin to X-rays are much more powerful than light rays. If the moon is a point of focus,
and the sun isn't very strong in this area, not a lot of snow, a lot of wind.
Condensed plasma, then it has to occur within one of the layers in the ionosphere above us. All the various inert noble gases in our ionosphere appear at differing layers and altitudes. We looked at how these are charged by the sun's electromagnetism to form the plasma sky. At a certain altitude in the ionosphere, there are two layers of neon and helium gas. It is likely that the sun forms in a similar fashion within these layers. After all, helium is linguistically very similar to Helios. It is likely, however, that the moon is formed at the level of altitude in which the gas krypton is present. Krypton is known for its phosphorescent white light. It is also used to create non-thermal or cold plasma, as demonstrated by contemporary scientists developing this field today. The primary reason that the moon's light is cold and not hot like the sun's is not known, but it is likely due to a polarity produced by their interaction with our electromagnetic field in the ionosphere, the moon being the dielectric negative polarity to the sun's positive charge. The craters seen on the moon are likely from the generation of this plasma. Perhaps it is some kind of plasma emulsion that displays a kind of outgassing or bubbling, much like we see with urethane paint defects.
I showed even with, like, sulfur being degassed and look at other elements being degassed. They're also in beakers and stuff like that, which is very interesting. It has to be like a very specific weight and density and all and balanced accurately and with the right frequency.
Recently, bizarre theories have emerged
sonoluminescence
that we live within one of these craters on the moon. This is not correct. The moon is some kind of phosphorescent, concentrated plasma and not a solid object. You can see the formation of this plasma and its craters right here. It is not solid, it is a light. And this is great because we have a very realistic and working model as to how the moon is formed. What we don't have, however, is an explanation as to how the composite image on its face is formed. As I said before, the image we are seeing on the moon is akin to a composite X-ray photograph of our greater realm. And it is not an active reflection, but rather a historical moment captured in time. And of course, no one knows how it is formed other than those in high places. The moon is a paradoxical phenomenon, at once a volatile luminary of plasma that waxes and wanes in its luminosity, and also a steadfast image captured at some point in time that does not seem to change. We only ever see this image on the moon, and it never changes.
People have been saying for many, many years that we had only seen 50% of the moon. It's very interesting that they would say that. And especially if it was like 1 or 2 dimensional. Anyway, and now they're alleging that people have been on the dark side and that we see like 55%. Like it's, anyways, it's all just bullshit. Like, anyway.
This strange and mysterious image that has puzzled and inspired millions could be a result of a natural, organic phenomenon, or perhaps even artificial. Again, only the controllers know. The word photo originates from the Greek photos. It means light. Hence we have words such as photosynthesis, which means the synthesis of light, in which plants harvest light energy and convert it into chemical energy. A photon is the quantum of the electromagnetic field, including electromagnetic radiation, such as light. A huge misconception is the notion that photographic imaging is not a natural, organic phenomenon. This is not correct. The word photograph means light drawing. The concept of natural light-sensitive material is well understood. Our bodies begin to darken when exposed to too much sunlight. Depending on the exposure to the UV, our bodies can develop tan lines. The light literally draws on us. Certain textures and textiles can fade or come to the surface when exposed to light. And there exist natural camera obscurers. A natural camera obscurer occurs when a darkened space with a hole permits light rays to enter from outside the space, resulting in a projected image of the space outside inside the darkened area. We can even see projected images of a solar eclipse here on the ground underneath a leaf canopy due to the holes in the leaves. Natural camera obscura was, of course, the inspiration for the early development of photographic technology. Interestingly, the noble gas krypton, the same gas present in our ionosphere, has been used for years, we are told, as an integral component in camera flashes for high-speed photography. It is also an essential component in hyperpolarized MRI scanners. There is also a possibility that the face of the moon is not a natural phenomenon, but was a result of an experiment. Photographic and X-ray films are created through a fusion of a gelatin emulsion with microscopic silver crystals. Because of this, exposure to light is able to capture an invisible latent image. During light exposure, the silver halide crystals grow to visible sizes, and this is what is called printing out the image. Microscopic silver was essential in producing traditional photographic images. Without it, the technology would not have been possible in the first place. Interestingly, in their alignment of noble metals with astronomical bodies, the alchemists designated the moon as having rulership over the metal silver.
That's what I just said.
The birth of modern photography began in 1800, we are told, when the uncle of Charles Darwin tried to capture the image produced in a camera obscura. He discovered that by coating white leather with silver nitrate, he was able to partially capture real-life images. The use of silver nitrate was developed further by Louis Daguerre, who went on to birth the daguerreotype and modern photography. But what is interesting is that silver nitrate goes by another name. They called it lunar caustic, in homage to the alchemists' association between the moon and silver. It's also quite interesting that many Masonic representations of the alchemists depict the sun and moon as reflected rays.
Silver and
And
gold.
what are the coincidences that the alchemists, who probably didn't exist in the manner we are told they did, associated the moon with the very metal in which traditional photography is impossible without? This is not a coincidence. Those of the old world knew what the moon was, and perhaps an older civilization that came before them and that were also technologically advanced had a hand in rendering the image on the moon. It's not that much of a preposterous notion, considering that we are continually experimenting with things on a cosmological scale today, staging fake rocket launches that sometimes get caught on the firmament, developing artificial suns, and some demons in higher places are even trying to find ways to dim the sun. Humans have always overstretched their ambitions when it comes to the luminaries, and I don't see why advanced civilizations of the past would have been any different. But how this composite image phenomenon came to be is not important for our journey. It's what it shows us that is important. and perhaps it is best to leave the moon shrouded in mystery. Whether a natural or artificial X-ray photographic image, what is important is its composite nature. The image we witness here is a combination of at least two fixed images that are superimposed upon one another. The first image we are seeing, as Sturgios's groundbreaking work has shown over and over again, is a skeletal outline of our realm's land masses, akin to an X-ray, and in a way we have never seen before. In this image, we see all the continents of land we associate with Earth, or what is more appropriately termed the known world, represented by the dark areas in the image. And we also see vast bodies of land and continents that we are completely unfamiliar with. Sturgios revealed that if you treat the moon as the mirror image it is, and flip its image like you would with any reflection, then you can start to map our known land masses with utmost precision. And this is exactly what Sturgios has done, mapping the known world captured in the moon down to its Great Lakes and deserts. The striking similarities between our known world landmass and that captured on the moon are far too exact for it to be any kind of coincidence. It has been right in front of our faces every single day, literally. It is likely that no one has connected the dots here before because of this particular unknown landmass, which Sturgios has appropriately named Lemuria. And this landmass is very important because we know that it does not exist anymore. Theories of Lemuria's existence as a lost continent have been around since the 19th century, with most plotting its location somewhere around the Indian Ocean. Those in the 19th century also spoke of another lost continent called Mu. They are one and the same thing. Old maps of Mu plot the land exactly where it is on the moon. And in 2007, Masaki Kimura discovered huge structures, including pyramids, castles, and roads on the ocean floor, some way from Japan, a location very similar to where Lemuria is plotted here on the moon. The continent sunk years and years ago, and this is very useful because it means that this image is not an active reflection, but a moment captured in time before the continent sunk. The second image we are simultaneously witnessing in our moon is that of the firmament itself. Yes, you heard me right. The moon is the only known official image of our firmament. The face of the moon is a composite image, and we have to separate the images to fully understand what we are seeing. We have the landmass of the greater realm, and this is one image from one angle. And then we have another image from a different angle. I can only illustrate this by showing you. This specific area of the moon is primarily what gives the phenomenon its spherical 3D appearance. The heliocentric liars love this area of the moon, and they have used it as a weapon of deceit against us. It is not a crater with rays, like they tell us. Look closer. Really look. This is not the markings of a spherical object. It is the apex of the domed firmament from within the dome. Watch closely. This is the composite image on the moon, presenting both images simultaneously.
I don't know about that.
And this is an interior of a hemisphere dome. And now, you see, if you align the central apex point of an interior hemisphere dome, then it becomes quite obvious. If you erase the remaining vector lines of the dome, then it becomes really obvious. And once you see it, it becomes very hard to unsee. It isn't a sphere. That is an optical illusion. It is the markings of a hemisphere dome. And not only is this the interior apex crown of the firmament, it is also a reflection of the center of our realm below. This area of the moon lends its spherical shape because of the so-called rays that emanate from it. But as you can see, it is an optical illusion. The rays are actually hemispherical ribs stemming from the dome's crown. This area in the middle of these ribs is not a crater. That is the vortex directly beneath the highest point of the dome. The controllers have named this area Tycho. It was given this name, we are told, by Jesuit astronomer Giovanni Riccioli in 1651. If it was not for Tycho, then the controllers of our realm would have a very hard time convincing millions that they lived on a giant spinning ball. And like with everything else, they have used Tycho to hide things in plain sight. For instance, another 17th century Masonic astronomer named Pierre Gassendi called it Umbilicus Lunaris, the navel of the moon. which is interesting as Norse mythology uses the same simile of the navel to describe Vergelmir, the whirlpool in the center of our realm. Arthur C. Clarke's Space Odyssey, one of the most famous science fiction novels of all time, features a crater on the moon named Tycho. In the novel, scientists find that there is a strong magnetic field emanating from the crater and discover that it is coming from a black cube monolith buried 15 meters within the crater. A black monolith, a rupes nigra, a magnetic black rock. If you separate the two images, then you can see clearly how they are in fact two images of two different angles that somehow have ended up superimposed on each other. We do not see any oceans or water mass captured in the first image, which suggests there is some kind of X-ray radiation at play. We don't see the vortex at the center in the first image for this reason. And again, no one knows how these images were formed. But if some kind of radiation beams were responsible, then the first image, the land masses of our greater realm, were most likely captured as the rays hit the firmament. And as those rays were reflected into our ionosphere and began forming the plasma mass we call the moon, it is likely that the second image was captured. And that is the image of the firmament, of the structure existing above us. And that's why we can see the outline of this structure, the stars beyond this structure, and the reflect.
Yeah, so just to verify, because again, when I went through this video, I was telling people that I kept on stopping, verifying or doing my own research. That I was getting into audiobooks, that I was getting into archive books, that I was going into Wayback Machine and stuff like that. And again, there's just like so much truth. And so even with Tycho lunar crater, Pierre Gassendi named it Umbilicus Lunaris, the navel of the moon. Then Landgren's 1645 map calls it that. Anyways, Mons Sinai after Mount Sinai. I've been at Mount Sinai at dawn, just before dawn, and watched the sun rise. It was beautiful. Anyway, so yeah, like just verifying some things just to show you that he's not pulling this out of his ass.
Of the vortex and other great deeps below. The moon is a masterpiece of distorted perspective, a plasma embodiment of as above, so below. And it's going to take a lot of work and careful consideration in smoothing out this distortion to try and get somewhere close enough to create a proper map of the world we live in. And because the moon is a disk-like mass of plasma, the first image of the land presents some curvilinear distortion. And you can see it here at the edges as the land begins to warp and wrap slightly. A lot of serious work needs to go into creating a flat projection of this distortion. But it shouldn't be too difficult because the distortion is only slight around these edges. And that's why Sturgios can map the circles of latitude, seasons, and time zones very accurately. A map without the distortion may look something like this. But important questions remain. If the central vortex is absent,
so I'm just going to go back to that.
Seasons and time zones very accurately. A map without a distortion may look something like this.
Let's take a look at this and these extra land masses, like I've talked about, like even again years ago. That's why I keep on asking, where exactly do people go when they allege they're in the South Pole? And because again, are they in an area, anyways, where there could possibly be what could be perceived as a 24-hour sun, but not be exactly where, anyway.
But important questions.
So look at this.
Main. If the central vortex is absent from the land image on the moon, then why has Sturgios plotted the land we assume is Hyperborea over here, which is not in the center? And what about all this other land? The sun and moon cannot journey above all of this land, as it would take more than 24 hours to circle all of this, and we know the paths of the sun and moon. And the big one, the one you've been desperate to ask about since uncovering the only map we have. Where is the ice wall that you flat earthers constantly bang on about? Let's start with Hyperborea. And here's where many flat earthers may experience cognitive dissonance. Although Sturgios has plotted Hyperborea here, there is no proof that this is the true Hyperborea. There are a lot of different land masses in this region, and we cannot be sure. It pains me to say that Hyperborea may not exist in the way we have come to believe. Mercator's Hyperborea is likely the work of the Masons to throw us off the real path. And this is what our purpose is all about, isn't it? Digging for the truth is difficult business, and as we dig deeper, we come to realize that artifacts we found before may not be as useful or important as we first thought. We all get it wrong, but stay with me, no need to despair just yet. It is very interesting that the Aberno Monte map was added to the Stanford University map collection and made available to the public in 2017, the same year that Flat Earth was gaining huge traction and people were starting to wake up. It's also interesting that it has been arranged as a planisphere. The huge individual sheets of this map were originally arranged as an atlas projection, but David Ramsey purchased the map in 2016, and the team got to work scanning each sheet individually and processing them digitally to wrap around a sphere. Perhaps the release of Monte's marvelous map was an attempt to keep flat earthers thinking Hyperborea was located at the North Pole, and to perhaps bring back any that was sitting on the fence and hadn't truly woken up yet. A very subtle act of manipulation. But why would they want the flat earth community to keep fixed on Hyperborea? I have some thoughts regarding Hyperborea, but first we must turn to the clocks. Those of the old world knew. They knew exactly the type of earth they lived upon, and it's displayed for everyone to see right here in the astronomical clocks. The zodiac dial here, or what is officially known as the ecliptic dial, on the Prague astronomical clock, allegedly constructed in the 15th century, does not divide its 30-degree constellation arcs equally. It is also off-center from the map behind and appears distorted, and so many clocks of the old world present very similar ecliptic dials. But let's look a little closer at this magnificent Prague clock. As you can see, the zodiac dial contains a border that presents a series of vertical lines. These lines represent a chunk of 5 days, and each zodiac section represents a month. Those of the old world use this dial to track the seasons, the phases of the moon, and to present the date. But in a realm of perfect circles, why are 6 of the 30-degree arcs here represented within a smaller space than the other 6? They all contain 5 subsections, so why are they different? As you can see here, the Prague astronomical clock presents the land of Earth in the middle. Why does the ecliptic dial need to be bigger and off-center with the representation of Earth? The official liars of our realm, the satanic controllers, have an answer, of course. They tell us it is because the ecliptic dial is a stereographic projection. Stereographic projection is a mapping function that projects a sphere onto a plane. All maps are stereographic projections. We have no accurate maps. Wikipedia tells us that the ecliptic plane is projected onto the face of the clock, and because of the Earth's tilted angle of rotation relative to its orbital plane, it is displaced from the center and appears to be distorted. The projection point for the stereographic projection is the North Pole. In their fabricated heliocentric model, the Earth has an axial tilt of 23.4 degrees. The controllers needed to invent the axial tilt to justify the entire spherical lie, to justify the seasons, the vastly differing climates, and to justify the absolute fixed position of Polaris over the true geographic north. The reason Polaris does not appear to move, they say, is because Polaris lies nearly in direct line with the Earth's rotational axis above the North Pole, the North Celestial Pole. Polaris stands almost motionless in the sky, and all the stars of the northern sky appear to rotate around it. Remember, everything in their model is moving at incomprehensible speeds. But we can see with our own eyes that Polaris remains fixed. If they did not invent the axial tilt, or what is known as the obliquity of the ecliptic, then they would have no way to justify this in their fairyland model of orbiting planets. Polaris does not move, it remains fixed. If you are in Iceland or America, you can film a star trail of Polaris, and it remains fixed. But it is not fixed directly overhead in these locations. The only place, we are told, to observe Polaris directly overhead at a 90-degree angle is the true geographic North Pole. You know, that place where no one ventures. And that's why they invented the tilt. They tell us that Earth's true geographic North Pole is tilting directly at Polaris. And as the Earth spins on its little axis, Polaris appears to remain fixed. They tell us that the star's steadfast nature is an optical illusion. But their lies fall apart swiftly when you consider that the entire constellation system of the stars above remain constant. We always see the same stars and constellations. If Earth was spinning on its axis while orbiting the sun, and the sun was zooming through our galaxy, which is also moving in a bigger universe, would the precession of the equinox really be that predictable? Would the constellations of the tropic circles of latitude really appear with such consistency in union year after year at the solstice, or would it appear a bit more random? They are liars, and we all know that water does not lie. Resting water does not curve or convex. For you see, the satanic controllers are masterminds of reverse engineering. The celestial...
I don't think the people are like satanic controllers. I just think it's like just really selfish, narcissistic people that are doing awful things, and their families and their friends have been generationally doing really, really, really awful things because they've been groomed and indoctrinated into doing these things, and or they're predator types, right? And so yeah, there's people that like they're not part anyway. They're in it for the power and the money.
The zodiac ecliptic dial is not a stereographic projection. The entire heliocentric model is reverse engineered science, and they had to start at Polaris and trace their steps back to ensure they justified its fixed, immovable position and made sure it was compatible with their globe. The Prague astronomical clock has been altered drastically over the last 200 years. It suffered fires, been restored and altered. And you can see that here in the way the projection of the Earth behind the clock has changed over time from a flat map to a bulging, unsightly sphere. But look, when you align the ecliptic dial with the map of our greater realm, then this all starts to make sense. The zodiac constellations appear distorted, despite all having 5 equal subsections, because our location is limited within a portion of the greater realm, and this governs our observational perspective of the stars. The shape of this dial has nothing to do with an axial tilt. It is designed this way to reflect our known world within this magnetic field pocket. The realm is much larger, and therefore the firmament and circumference of the fixed stars in the water beyond is much larger than the circumference of our own magnetic field. Polaris is here, above the center, and this is so important. They tell us that our magnetic North Pole is separate from what they call true geographic north. Our magnetic North Pole is moving. How can that be? Is that just another one of their lies? No, it is not. It is a half-truth. They tell us over the course of a century, the magnetic North Pole has moved from its location just above Canada to near Greenland and is now en route to Siberia. It is moving fast. Why? The symbol of the swastika and the black sun offer some clues as to why. For years now, flat earthers have come to see the magnetic North Pole and geographic North Pole as synonymous, but they are not. As you know, the swastika symbolizes the vortex, but the black sun takes its symbolic message further. The central core circle here represents the iron core, the black sun, or what the fictional Mercator called the Rupes Nigra. But look closer. There is another ring outside of the central core. Remember, the black sun is the energetic core inside of the vortex. And remember also that in the heliocentric model, they acknowledge that the Earth's core is a solid iron sphere, but there also exists an outer core of molten iron liquid. They also tell us that this liquid outer core is responsible for producing our moving magnetic field and poles. This is why the pole is moving, because the magnetic field is not emanating from the solid core, but from a volatile outer core. This is what the second circle here represents. And like everything heliocentric related, all you need to do is apply common sense and flatten the curve, and things start to make sense. There is not a spherical outer core, but some kind of electromagnetic coil, perhaps even made of molten iron, surrounding the central solid core. At the core, we have a vortex opening, but the actual volatile energetic source is beneath. The central core is akin to a central clock dial. It's solid and remains fixed, and everything else moves around it. but it is also the keystone responsible for this entire movement. Everything surrounding our world moves. The stars above move, the sun and the moon, and the electromagnetic outer core under us, and all the while the land itself and central solid core remain stationary. And not only does this outer core move and take our magnetic North Pole with it, but it is highly likely that it moves in accordance with the precession of the equinox, in time with the stars above as they move from their fixed positions, which means that it probably moves 30 degrees of the realm circumference every 2,160 years. The North Magnetic Pole is slowly moving, and it is as natural as the sun and moon's concentric journey above us. And this is why the symbol of the black sun is a 12-spoked wheel. Each spoke represents a fixed constellation of the zodiac. Each section is an individual age. And the result is a situation like this. Every 2,160 years, our North Magnetic Pole circles the inner solid core and vortex by 30 degrees. This is why the pole has moved from Canada and is en route to Siberia. It is traversing the outer central circle, or what is more appropriately termed the magnetic circle. We live inside of a perfect clock, inside of God's clock. The sun and moon circle our magnetic North Pole, which is situated roughly at the center of our known world's landmass. But this magnetic North Pole circles the inner vortex and completes a full revolution every 25,920 years, or what is referred to as a great year. Each great year consists of 12 precessional or astronomical ages of 2,160 years each. We are on the cusp of entering the age of Aquarius, and this is why our magnetic North Pole is en route to Siberia. As the North Magnetic Pole circumvents the central magnetic circle, the toroidal magnetic field moves with it. The sun and moon are bound in their revolution by our magnetic North Pole, and because of this, they move within our magnetic toroidal field only. This is why the magnetic North Pole will always be the center of our known world. As I said before, the first image of the landmass presented in the moon's face is likely akin to an X-ray image and has not captured any water mass. And because of this, it has only recorded the areas of our realm with high density, such as the land, in the same way an X-ray image will capture the parts of our bodies with the highest density, like the bone, but not the blood in our veins. In a sense, it is appropriate to view the landmass captured here as skeletal, and because of this, it has not captured the water or ocean surrounding our land, nor does it display a differentiation between the frozen landmass and that which is not frozen. If the sun's concentric journey above us is bound by the North Magnetic Pole here and its magnetic toroidal field, and this entire magnetic field is moving with the pole, then it is likely we have a situation of a changing climate as this process unfolds. All areas outside of our magnetic field will inevitably be frozen and dark due to the lack of sunlight. And this is consistent with what some of the scriptures have told us. I saw the great rivers, and I came to the great river, and to the great darkness, and went to the place where no flesh walks. I saw the mountains of the darkness of winter. This is your ice wall, and it's not a constant, fixed wall. It is continually melting and refreezing with the revolution of the pole over the course of a great year and each astronomical age. Do you now understand why they are terrified of the ice melting, of our Earth supposedly heating up, and why this demonic joke of a man wants to dim the sun? They are using natural climate change due to the rotation of the magnetic pole to justify a whole host of useless measures and money laundering. They are terrified because they are on the verge of losing all control of the narrative. We must save the precious Antarctica from melting, the last unspoiled place on Earth. But as you can see, there is no landmass for us to call Antarctica. It is a complete lie. When they refer to Antarctica, there is only the Antarctic Circle, and a lot of the footage at the so-called Antarctica could have been taken at any location around this circle. As you can also see, the landmasses of South America, New Zealand, and Australia all fall within close proximity to the outer edge of the greater world map. and would therefore be within close proximity to the foundations of the firmament itself. This is most likely the reason there is heavy military presence in these regions. The changing climate, the melting of the Antarctic Circle, is as natural as day and night. It is a macro process of the larger clock we live within. We have already discussed how the constellations that the sun is in during the equinox and solstice form a cross on the zodiac wheel when signaling the age and tropic designation. We'll look closer at the Prague clock again. The central dial of the clock is placed within the center of our magnetic field, and the sun and moon move within this field. Our magnetic field is off center from the overall greater realm.
The long cross.
It isn't an even cross, but a true cross, or what is now referred to as a Latin cross or crucifix. We live within the crossbeam of the cross. And in case you hadn't noticed, our magnetic field pocket within the greater realm also forms a crescent moon. Not the type of crescent moon associated with the alchemical mercury and silver, but this kind of crescent moon. The same symbol that the controllers appropriated and redesignated to represent nobility. The cross and crescent are natural expressions inherent in the workings of the timepiece we live within. They are natural expressions of God's clock. And we got it wrong. Polaris is not situated 90 degrees above our north magnetic pole, in the region we call the Arctic, home to Greenland and Iceland. Polaris rests above the vortex at the center of the greater realm. And this is where the distinction between geographic cardinal directions and magnetic directions needs to be emphasized. When we travel across our known world, or the land within our toroidal magnetic field, we use a magnetic compass, and the magnetic pole is in the center. That's why when we travel from west to east, we go in a circle, and when we travel north, we go towards the center, and when traveling south, we move directly away from the center. However, there also exist geographic cardinal points. And what do the scriptures have to say about this? It's right there in Enoch's reference to the 4 quarters of the world. Our magnetic field, according to Enoch, lies in the geographic north of the greater realm. And the first quarter is called the east, because it is the first. And the second, the south, because the Most High will descend there. And the west quarter is named the diminished. And the fourth quarter, named the north, is divided into 3 parts. First of them is for the dwelling of men. The second contains seas of water, the abysses and forests and rivers, and darkness and clouds. And the third part, the garden of righteousness. The vortex is in the center of the realm, or what is more appropriately termed true north. The X-ray image of the land on the moon map does not display this vortex, but as discussed, it is present in the second image of the firmament. At the crown of the firmament, we see it reflected, the navel of the world. It could be that the garden of righteousness that Enoch refers to, and what is also known as Hyperborea, is located right where Sturgios has plotted it. But this land is not the true north or central vortex. That can only exist in the center. And as stated before, there is some curvilinear distortion present in the composite image on the moon's face. I have used my little colorful map here strictly for illustrative purposes. I am not a map maker, but I did attempt to smooth some of this distortion out. Let's hope Sturgios tackles the distortion. And in both my quick attempt and the actual moon map, we do see a body of land right in the center, right here. Perhaps this is the garden of righteousness, surrounding the central vortex. And perhaps Enoch's reference to it being located in our northern quarter is because it can only be accessed from within this quarter. Who knows? It is likely that the controllers deliberately put Hyperborea at the Arctic in the fraudulent maps to throw anyone of a curious and adventurous nature off track. If someone set out to find true north using these maps, they would fail. And because of the distinction between magnetic and geographic direction, finding true north would be a monumental feat, even without their deceptions. If anyone wanted to truly journey to the center of our greater realm, they would have a very hard time, and they would need to forsake the compass altogether. If the geographic south of our magnetic field is down here, with the lands usually associated with south, then the central vortex of the greater realm falls within our geographic north. But we would not be able to reach it with the compass pointed north. It is not located at our north magnetic pole. If you use a compass to travel north, you will end up traveling here. If the South Pole is the entire Antarctic Circle, then to travel to the true north, you would need to go south. But even then, this would most likely fail. If the center is made of iron, then at some point it would supersede the southern magnetic pole of our magnetic field.
Yep.
If by chance you were lucky to head in the direction of true north, then the compass would most likely fail altogether due to the iron core. As the mysterious text, the Inventio Fortunata, states, here the ship's compass loses its property, and no vessel with iron on board is able to get away. The only way to get to true north is by celestial navigation via Polaris, a skill set that has been generally eradicated from common knowledge. And I bet these oceans are heavily guarded. We will be returning to magnetic fields later in our journey. And we really need to reappropriate the definition of the word planet. Planet, a smaller subsection or fraction of a much larger plane. Time is ticking, viewer. You are wondering why I brought you into this dark forest. Why is all of this important? Because once upon a reset, the established timeline is a lie. We cannot begin to map our revised timeline unless we start plotting it in accordance with the greater realm we inhabit. We need to apply the astronomical clock, the ages, to get closer to some kind of clarity. We are not out of the forest yet. And can you feel it yet? The entire matrix is starting to crumble. Everything we've ever learned, everything we've ever relied upon to shape our understanding of the realm we temporarily inhabit is now unreliable. And all we are left with is our own eyes. And all we see over and over again is water always seeking its flat level. We see structural remains that those in the history books could not have built. And we see a great evil multiplying. We only have our eyes and old photographs, moments captured in time, the act of photography, the art of juxtaposition, of comparison and contrast. We are so small, our world in the mirror. Where are the maps of the age of Pisces? Where has our history gone? And what has become of us now? Are we that different to those we see in the 19th century? Look at us, desperately searching for lost time. Our boots caked in mud, our entire days spent digging through the deception, digging and moving the mud, frantically digging, tired and aching, but not giving up. And what do we find? The same things that our ancestors of the 19th century found. Glimmers of glory, of beauty, of pain, and wonder that remain stubbornly silent, offering no explanation for its existence or how it came to be. Old photographs and such glory. I haven't shown you just how impossible these structures are yet. The only thing these people have ever built is the lie, brick by brick. And I need to show you how they did it. Our world in the mirror, once upon a reset. There have been many great resets during our realm's history, all very different in nature. We need to look at all of them. How to reset time, to wind back the clock. The death and dawn of a new age. This was not the first reset, nor is it the last. It is happening again right now. Empty cities, such quietness. There is a war going on back home, viewer, and most haven't even realized. A peculiar and irregular type of war. Silent warfare, information warfare, biological warfare. A war as old as time itself. A war between the forces of light and those of darkness. And we're caught in the middle, on the cusp of the dawning of a new age. A war for Aquarius, the water bearer. Watch the water. And for us who fell in love with the truth, and who have resisted the darkness, we've had the armor of God on now for so long. How many of your friends and family have deserted you? How many of them left you stuck in the mud? And you've remained steadfast. But it's time we took a stand and became very loud. It's time to draw the sword of truth. The blind are going to need us because nothing can stop what is coming. The legend of Offerus, bearing Christ, bearing the truth so it can reach the masses. I will try my best to continue our journey, but as things become even darker, the lights will inevitably go out, and our journey may end here. But you have more than you know, more than you need. You've seen enough deception. Do not believe a single thing they say. We have to try and keep moving. The clock is ticking, and we don't have much time. We need to go to Siberia. There is something frozen in the ice that needs examining. Come on, it's time to address the big question. Who were the citizens of the future? And it's not what you think. The timeline is wrong, and the maps are fake. This is not the answer. No. For you see, they had a king over them, and not just any king.
Yep, that was very interesting. Okay. Just going to shut it down. Anyway, very long video today, and I do have more stuff to do. So on that note, I will leave it at that, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.